Should there be a second referendum? Almost 3 million people seem to think so, and now an MP has suggested the referendum we've had is not, in fact, binding. Really? And from 8 o'clock this morning, is Britain still great? Runner Paula Rucliffe says the vote to leave the EU means we just took the great out of Great Britain. What is great in that context? First, though, 3/4 of 18 to 24-year-olds voted to remain in the EU. An overwhelming number of Leave voters are older. As a youngster, do you think that you have been stitched up by us, the older generation? I think it's the other way around. We'll talk. And Jeremy Corbyn has sacked his shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn. We'll have more on that. Call me 0345 6060 973. Oh, God. Morning. It just goes on and on and on. And if you think it's over now, forget about it. After June the 23rd was June the 24th. I thought on June the 24th we were all going to move on and we were not going to be talking about this. However, I'm very happy to do so. There is so much happening. It is actually overwhelming, don't you think? It's amazing. And you can sit there, and I did sit there last night. I'd had one drink. It wasn't a drinking thing. It was one drink. And I sat there and I watched the news, talking about the EU, of course. And I watched the news and I actually went cold. There was some bloke on from Holland talking about NATO and about our place in Europe. And I just went, oh, my Lord, what have we done? I really did. The question, I mean, there's so many questions, but have the young been let down by the older generation? You see, anger begins to seep out. It's rather like when when there's a grief, when there's a mourning process. Anger is a legitimate part of it. And there's a lot of anger about now. And the young get angry quite quickly, don't they? And that's good. You're supposed to be a little bit righteous at a young age. Have the young been let down by the elder generation? Now, listen, I'm trying to find personal examples. I once said to my mum and dad that it was their fault, the fault of their generation, that the conditions had been created for the Second World War to happen, OK? I can remember I was in the car at the time. Stupid boy. Anyway, I was probably cross about something, but, loads of leaps of logic there. But, again, young, fair dues. I was leaping across chasms of logic, to be frank, bearing in mind that they had a fish and chip shop and were doing their best to raise 5 children born between 53 and 63. But my thought process was that they were the adults at a time when National Socialism started, so they hadn't stopped it from flourishing, so it was their fault. OK, fair enough. Immature, stupid, fine. Dad was in the Second War, actually. Mum was a child. My logic was utter nonsense. The product of a juvenile mind. Dad's generation actually fought Hitler. Nevertheless, the points I was making were answered by an older generation. And now, young, energetic, idealistic people, they want and deserve an answer on why this nation has decided, against their wishes, to leave the EU. Did you know how proud the young were of being European? I didn't. Did it really cross your mind that it was their future that we were talking about? Have the older generation let the younger generation down? 0345 6060 973. Let us commence 3 hours of breakfast here on LBC with a good chat about that. Lord Digby Jones, former Trade Minister, is with me this morning. So is Rupert Myers, the political correspondent of GQ. Both friends of this programme. A very good morning and thank you for making time for us on an early hour on a Sunday. Have we let the young down? Lord Digby Jones first. Morning.
Well, I actually think we've done them all a favour, because what this country has done, and I'm very interested, Andrew, that you put forward the example of Second World War, is we actually have said, as a nation, and remember this is a referendum of the United Kingdom. By the way, Nicola Sturgeon, you might remember that when you're talking about Scotland as well. This is the United Kingdom. And we took a vote, and what we actually said was, subliminally, quite subconsciously really, is that there are a few things in life that matter more than money, and democracy is one of them. And we have put democracy, freedom, ahead of money. And when you think about it, we are leaving them a country that is actually saying to the world and saying to Europe, we're not going to be ruled by unaccountable, unelected people. And it's as simple as that. It might show itself in forms of, I haven't got control of my borders, or somebody else saying I've got regulation that I never voted people to do, or if you've got politicians here, you can vote to get rid of them or vote to elect them. You can't do that in Brussels. There were loads of different arguments, but the biggest argument of all was that the British people have said, if you give us somebody who we can vote in and we can vote out, then we're all right. But if we're not going to have it. That is an incredibly important point. And if out of all of this comes a reformed European Union where they do have people who govern them who they elected, I think Britain will have done a wonderful thing for the young, and it's a wonderful thing for Europe to have a country saying there will be choppy water. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad and as long as the doommongers say. And the Remain campaign are in a big sulk, aren't they? They're in this huge sulk. They're lost. If it was the other way around, then the Remain campaign would be saying, now, democracy worked, you had your say, you lost, so suck it up and just get on with your life.
There are a few tennis matches I'd like to go back and replay, Digby. I have to be...
action. And democracy in action means you've got to now bring your talent and your energy and your money and everything else to make our wonderful, fabulous country succeed in a globalised world. And in Asia's century, then the young have got to have a competitive Britain, a competitive London.
Okay,
and that's what we've just given them.
All right, Digby, thank you very much. That's a passionate a passionate explanation of why it's all good news, Rupert. The people have spoken, and the young have to accept it. The older generation have not, in fact, let the young down. They've actually done them a favour. Go.
They were fine words, weren't they, from an unaccountable and unelected Lord Digby Jones there. And it's all very well to say that democracy is more important than money when you're in one of the generations that has had the best of it. Cheap access to higher education, cheap housing, great jobs. It's very easy for the older generations to say, do you know what, we've got enough money. Doesn't matter if 200 trillion is wiped off the global stock market. It doesn't matter if we can't trade freely with the rest of Europe, because we've got it pretty comfortably. What Lord Digby Jones perhaps isn't reflecting and isn't understanding is that for the generations that have come after his, and particularly the youngest generation who are trying to enter the workplace, this is an absolutely staggering and quite upsetting shock. I don't believe any of the younger generations thought that this was conceivably going to happen. And I'll be honest, I don't think that a lot of the people who voted to leave the EU believed that it would happen either. The polling suggests that many of them, and some that I've spoken to, didn't really believe it had happened. They cast their vote in protest. But the worst element of this is that many of the people who voted to leave didn't do so to deliberately harm the chances of the younger generation. They did so on the basis of lies. And we know that they were lies because the out-campaigners have already abandoned several of the key promises that sold their message to many voters.
Okay, Rupert, let's let Digby Jones respond to a couple of those points, because I'm sure he wants to. £350 million a week on the side of a bus to the NHS when we take it back from Brussels. That was nonsense. We can't control migration either. That's just two of them, Digby.
Well, firstly, when he says I'm unaccountable and unelected, I'm not on your programme because I'm a member of the House of Lords. I'm on your programme because I actually believe that Britain is stronger and better outside the European Union. I completely agree that members of the House of Lords, if I was here trying to abuse that position, you have a point. But please don't come on here and start saying that Juncker and all the other people in Brussels, because they're unaccountable and unelected, somebody else in Britain who absolutely disagrees with you for some reason can't say so. And the lies that the Remain campaign put up to Britain, we're going to have a third world war. Which ones were those? We're going to have a third world war, are we?
Well, I don't think they didn't.
Every British person is going to be £4,000 a year worse off in 30 years' time, are they? There were lies. And actually, at the end of the day, we do lose control of £350 million every week. It won't cost Britain £350 million a week. You're quite right, because some of it comes back inside a quarter by way of rebate. Some of it is spent in our country. But at the end of the day, those are decisions taken by people in Brussels, not by the British government. And the question of immigration, London is a city-state. It is the capital of the world. It has made an enormous success of immigration. It's made an enormous success of so many aspects of 21st century life.
And what's going to happen now to those people from other parts of the world? What's going to happen now, Digby, to those people? No. If I can just get an answer, if I can get an answer to this, what is going to happen to those people now? What about the 50,000 people who work in the NHS who are from elsewhere? What about care workers? What about people who have created businesses and who have paid tax and all that now? What happens now? This is the plan that we need to hear about now that the decision has been made.
With respect, Andrew, that is alarmism, because I sincerely hope that...
Why is that alarmism?
Well, because the people who are listening to this, who are those 50,000 in the NHS, who are the people...
They're panicking.
Who have come here and made a success of their lives in our country, they're not only welcome, but I sincerely hope they'll stay and carry on living in a peaceful, wonderful world that they can be in and enjoy it. No one's going to send them home. Mm-hmm. No one's going to round them up and deport them. This is dreadful. They are welcome.
What is going to happen to those people, Digby?
This is about electing somebody in this country, Labour, Tory, Liberal, Green, UKIP, Liberal, I don't mind who, but they can make a decision as to how many people come into this country every year. And some years, it'll be quite a few. Mm-hmm. And other years, it won't be many.
What about the people who are already...
It is mendacious to say that people who are here are going to be deported. It is mendacious
I didn't say it.
That there won't be any. It is, this country needs a bit of leadership right now.
Yeah, it does.
People who are going to say, this is how it's going to be. And this was a referendum of the whole of the country for all of the people. Yeah. And because some people don't like it, that is democracy.
Okay. Digby, thanks to the moment. Rupert Myers will want to respond to a couple of those points. I'd like him to respond to this one. If you want to have a voice, as Digby Jones has just said, you vote. You take part in a democratic process. I have heard a lot of anger from young people, both on Twitter and social media, which is the way they talk now, across the news outlets and here on LBC, saying they've been let down by the older generation. And yet, as far as I can see, around about a third of 18 to 24-year-olds did not vote. That is apathy. That is their fault. And they had the chance to make a decision and to make a difference, and they haven't taken it. So the older generation have not let down the young. It's the other way round, Rupert.
If you or Lord Digby Jones enters into a contract and you've been lied to, then you can undo it. Fraud unravels all. And I think there'll be a lot of people who voted and a lot of people who didn't vote on the basis of arguments that have turned out to be completely specious. Digby Jones there was talking about the fear-mongering of the In campaign, saying we'd lose £4,000 a year from this. We know that the UK stock market fall is equivalent to every man, woman and child in this country losing £6,000, and that's in the last 2 days since it happened. So I don't believe that it's been Project Fear. I think absolutely right to say that we're starting to see Project Fact emerge. And I've spoken to people who are here from Switzerland, who are here from France, who are here from Holland, who do not feel welcome. And there are huge numbers of stories coming out of kids in the playground bullying kids, saying, oh, you'll have to go home now. Women being shouted at as they walk down the street by drivers saying, go home. Polish people receiving letters through their doors saying, go home, Poles, you're not welcome here. It's totally irresponsible to suggest that the atmosphere in this country at the moment is one of sort of sunny optimism for our brilliant future. The financial services, the legal services that rely upon our access to the single market, they will be looking to move to the continent as soon as possible. I don't believe that London will continue to be the financial centre of the world. I think Frankfurt is going to eat our sandwiches. And what's going to happen with Heathrow and Gatwick? Schiphol Airport is going to take all of those flights while we continue to argue for the next 5 to 10 years about this total mess. And I don't think that most people really thought that this would happen, and I don't believe that most people realised that what they were being sold by the Out campaign was a pack of lies. And that's why this isn't going to go away.
Rupert, thank you very much indeed. At 9 o'clock, we're going to talk about whether or not a second referendum is still a possibility, either constitutionally or morally, whether or not that should be allowed. So we will talk about that. I want to thank my two guests here, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but there are times when I'm trying to get answers, and I will interject, but I really appreciate the contributions from both Lord Digby Jones and from Rupert Myers. Now it's over to you. 0345 6060 973. Have the older generation let down the young? I'll take you through the newspapers in a minute. You know what's on all the front pages. Some tremendous output in the papers, and we'll take a look at the travel. Early doors it is, 18 minutes past 7, Sunday morning here on LBC. 7:21 is the time. Andrew Castle with you through until 10 o'clock this morning, of course, talking about the EU. This hour, talking about the older generation. Have we let down the young by leaving the EU? We're not going to be spending years there in the EU. They have. I want your calls on this. So 345 6060 973. We've already made all our money, haven't we? Houses and the pensions and all the rest of it. Now, what about you? You can't get a job. And I know none of you are awake at this point. None of you between 18 and 24 are awake at 22 minutes past 7 on a Sunday morning. But if you are, we'd love to hear from you, and I've got all your texts and emails and all the rest of it coming in, so I will get to those in just a moment. Carol's in Twickenham, and we'll be picking that up in just a second. But overnight, news emerging that Hilary Benn has been sacked from the Cabinet, Shadow Foreign Secretary. That was an interesting move, wasn't it? I wonder where this puts Jeremy Corbyn ahead of Monday night, and this no-confidence motion which has been tabled. The meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party surely will be a stormy one. Let's get more from the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, joins us this morning. There you are. You're up bright and early. We appreciate the phone call, Kevin. Was this a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? This one.
I think it was, particularly the way it's happened. We know Hilary Benn, Shadow Foreign Secretary, son of Tony Benn, of course, had great misgivings about Jeremy Corbyn. But for him to tell Jeremy Corbyn, one, he's lost his confidence, and two, he thinks the Labour Party will lose the election under Jeremy Corbyn, means that Corbyn had no choice but to sack Benn. But it now means what we saw in the Conservative Party in that civil war rumbling through all the way through the referendum, erupting afterwards with the Prime Minister departing, is now infected Labour. It's such a momentous referendum decision, this, which has divided Britain. It's divided political parties. It looks like the winners didn't really want to win. We've got economic turmoil. The Prime Minister's gone. There might be an early election. And Labour now is mounting a coup against Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah. I mean, so there will be... How does a secret ballot happen for a vote of no confidence? Because on the no confidence motion has gone forward. So is it Monday night there's a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party? What would
happen, Andrew, is if this motion is discussed at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, which is a meeting of all the MPs and peers in Parliament, if they decide they want this ballot of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn, it will be held in secret on the Tuesday with only peers and MPs voting. But the problem is, I don't think it's really binding. And if there was another Labour leadership election, because Jeremy Corbyn realises that he has to try and restore his authority, and he actually decides, puts his hat in the ring and says, right, I'm going to resign, we'll have another ballot. He could well be re-elected by the Labour Party members, all those people who, 3 and 5 of them elected him last September, including all those people on the left who joined for a few quid. They could well re-elect him.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinary situation. You've got Boris Johnson, favourite to become Prime Minister on the right. You've got Jeremy Corbyn, who is so far to the left he's off the charts. Tony Blair has talked about this. I mean, a lot of people think that he's totally unelectable and can't possibly become Prime Minister, and yet he's enormously popular with momentum and the like, and the young particularly. It's something that we're talking about this hour. He really is. People look at him as like some sort of messiah figure, don't they, on the left of the Labour Party, Corbyn?
If you look at British politics at the moment and you ask who can get a hall full, who can have them queuing round the block to go and hear them speak, I would argue there's only 3 people. One is Boris Johnson, as you say, on the right. The other is Nigel Farage of UKIP. And the third is Jeremy Corbyn. And Corbyn connected with a lot of people who are particularly young, idealistic, they want change, and it's almost the polarisation of British politics now, and everybody can appeal to a small constituency, but to have a figure like Tony Blair, and I know he's derided now, but back in his day, back in the mid-90s and 1997, he could reach right across the country, and he got a huge coalition of people following him, young and old, middle-aged as well, people who might be old, young, rich, poor. They all back Tony Blair. Nobody seems to be able to do that now.
It's very interesting. Kevin, thank you very much indeed. We are going to talk about this later on. Hilary Benn, Shadow Foreign Secretary, sacked from the Shadow Cabinet by the leader, Jeremy Corbyn. So we'll discuss the implications of that. Taking your calls on 0345 6060 973. 26 minutes past 7 on Have the Older Generation Let Down the Young? There's a lot of righteous anger about this EU referendum, and yet the young didn't vote, did they? I mean, the apathy, come on, whatever facts were out there, whatever bits of propaganda, whatever you want to call it, bites of information, it's up to you to filter and distill that. Don't tell me that we didn't put stuff out there. 88% of economists say it's going to be a blimmin' disaster. You know, a list of eminent people, experts, as long as your arm, saying don't leave the EU. So don't tell me the information was not out there. You reap what you sow. And it's all very well being angry now, young people. Where were you at the poll? Let's talk to Carol in Twickenham. The old have let down the young, yes or no? Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. I believe, yes, they have let down the young. I think what we're failing to not understand possibly in this debate is that 14 to 16, that age group, are very intelligent, very well-read. They know what's ahead of them. And what is ahead of them is GCSEs, A-levels and university. And now they feel that, don't forget, they've been in European Union all their lives, yes, as such, and they feel totally abandoned. Of course, nobody can listen to them because they're too young to have a vote, but they're very opinionated and very, very worried. And I can tell you that because I have a child of that age group. So just reassure that child, Carol, that everything's going to be fine. I have reassured her. Mm-hmm. I have reassured her. But because I'm not reassured myself, I find it very, very difficult. But I have, and my husband has. But what I want to say, Andrew, is last night I watched the news and my stomach sank because they were interviewing people all over the country. And one lady said, will there be a second, can we have a second choice now? Can we go back now? Because I wanted Cameron out.
OK, Carol, thank you very much indeed. So a protest vote you've described there. Ian is in Inner Stansted. Have the older generation let down the young? Carol thinks that that is the case. Morning.
Well, I find that quite hilarious that somebody can say that it's OK. I voted out, just for me to say, I voted out for the sake of my children, because the way I see it, if I look back to when I was 18 and 19, if somebody told me that I'd have to wait 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment, I'd be astonished.
When was the last time you waited 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment?
I never get a chance to actually say what I want to say when I come on, because people come back. If you actually want to hear my monologue of the reason... I don't want to hear your monologue. I want you to answer the question then, Ian. I mean, I simply said, when was the last time... You said something and I'm challenging you. When was the last time you waited 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment? Well, my wife phoned up about 7 days ago.
And went to the doctor?
And got told 2 weeks,
OK, so carry on, Ian. Let's not fall out. It's too early.
You've got that issue, but, what's the chances of the kids getting out of where they're living at home these days? I mean, all these youngsters don't know any different, and really what they're not doing is actually looking at what's coming, because everything has been swept under the carpet until afterwards. I've not yet to come across a single youngster who's heard of TTIP, which is the privatisation of the NHS. And everybody is going crazy, going, yeah, everybody's got to get out. And that's never going to happen. If you've made a home here and you've made a life here and you've made a contribution, you can stay. But you cannot have... I have Romanian people in my taxi. I have Polish people in my taxi. And we had this discussion. The thing is, the problem is, what we're letting in is everybody. Absolutely everybody. And if you've got an Eastern European country that's only paying a certain amount of money in wages... and then they see a better life here, they're going to come here. And then my question must be, well, why is their money so low over there?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I hope you feel like you've had enough airtime to give your views. We certainly appreciate your call, and we're taking more on them. Have the older generation let down the young? It's 0345 6060 973. I blame the media, says Ruditio on at LBC. It was them that fueled the lies of leaving the EU. And then another one, if Jeremy Corbyn was so popular with the young, why was the turnout so low? Why didn't he mobilise them? And that's Louise Murphy, also coming in on Twitter. We shall continue to have this conversation this hour, the older generation letting down the young or the other way around. And I tell you what, at 7:31, we'll take a little perspective on things now and we'll step back and we'll breathe, because today is the anniversary of something truly shocking that took place on that Tunisian beach. 30 Britons were murdered in Sousse. We go back to the beach with two very brave survivors. It's just after 7:30. It's a Sunday morning. Let's have a look at the news now with Glenn Moore.
Jeremy.
Yes, Andrew Castle here, 25 to 8. Katie Hopkins coming along at 10 o'clock this morning, returning to our question, have the older generation let down the young? I'll tell you what we're doing at 8 o'clock as well with Paula Radcliffe. We're coming out with a tweet saying we've lost the great out of Great Britain. We're going to be talking about that. So obviously this is all centred around the EU debate. Should there be a second referendum? That's at 9 o'clock this morning. And I'll tell you what we're going to do later on. We're going to talk to James Ward, British tennis player. Wimbledon starts tomorrow. He's playing Novak Djokovic first up on centre court. So before he goes to practice, we shall have a little chat with him. And I haven't done the papers yet either, but anyway, lots to talk about. And I want to talk about what happened a year ago as well. A year ago today. A minute's silence is due to be held to mark the first anniversary of that terrorist attack in Tunisia, which killed 38 people. 30 Britons were among the victims who died after being targeted in the coastal resort of Sousse. It was June the 26th, a year ago. Government buildings across the United Kingdom and British embassies overseas will observe the silence at noon. The Tunisian ambassador to London, Nabil Ammar, has this message.
We are here, we are back. And we are not going to let those who did those horrible crimes claiming victory at all.
Yes, it's the worst terror attack on UK nationals since the 7/7 London bombings. LBC's Charlotte Wright has taken two survivors, Shelley Wright and Ben Wilton, back to the resort of Sousse.
So we're just leaving the hotel and we're going to walk down to the beach now. And would you spend much of your holiday kind of sitting out by the pool here in the bar?
Yes. We
That was our room there.
Yeah, that one right there, just above the reception area. Yeah. So we were overlooking this area here. So yeah, we spent a lot of our time here because this is where everything's going on, and you can see that you got the stage there just in front of the windows. That's where they'd have the entertainment going on at all times. So it just seems really strange that it's so quiet here now.
Yeah. This is a very long road. I don't think I could run up this.
I don't remember it being this long, and I'm not much of a runner. And yeah, I had Shelley by the hand and I sprinted. And we weren't stopping.
I don't remember it being this long. My stomach's turning now because I can actually see where we sat. We sat right here. It's very strange feeling.
I just got the thought of just the people running now, just walking down here. That's just what's going through my head.
There was one baby that was here, and I always noticed him at the pool. And they sat next to us that day, and I can still hear the screech from his mum, just trying to get him, because he was a little bit away from her, playing and just trying to get her baby to safety. That sound taunts me, goes through my head now, still to this day. Whew.
Let's just walk down there now. Do you feel okay?
Yes, yeah.
It's empty on that side where it all happened.
Yeah.
Nothing there.
What did it look like when you were here last time?
Full of people, just completely full. It's really strange to see that. Well, all I can see in front of me right now is about 6 people, but I think it was probably more like 6,000 that day. There was. But every moment we came to the beach, wasn't it? Whether it was early in the morning, whether it was late at night, there was always lots and lots of people here. All those thousands of people that were on the beach here, sunbeds everywhere, and all of those people just completely running towards us, running to safety.
Yeah, like I said, I was sat just by there, and I just saw all these people literally rolling off sunbeds, and my first thought was fireworks, that's what it sounded like, but in a split second you think it's midday, it's not fireworks, and then there was more shots, and we just ran, and as we ran up the path you could see the the bangs and the grenades as well.
It got louder as we were running, wasn't it? That the sound got more and more.
You heard the shots going off just metres from you. Could you see anything?
I could see the sand flying in the air. So from what we realise now, that was from the gunshot.
How do you feel standing on this beach now, here?
It's like being in a different place.
All I'm thinking about now is just that so many people died here last a year ago. In a few days, just where we're standing right now. It's just surreal, really. You know, I remember everything that happened, but it still doesn't feel like I was there. It just feels like a dream.
I feel extremely emotional standing here right now. I've got so many emotions going through my head. Just, like I said, because it was such a happy memory for us, and we've brought a happy memory from it, but to realise that it's not a happy memory for so many other people is just devastating to think.
Charlotte Wright taking two survivors, Shelley Wright and Ben Wilton, back to the resort of Seuss. And tomorrow there'll be a minute's silence at noon for that terrible, terrible event. Our time now is 7:40, so 20 to 8. Sunday morning, Andrew Castle with you here, and we're returning to the debate on the EU. Have the older generation let down the young, or is it actually the other way around? Lots of you making the point that if you want to vote, if you want to have a say, then you have your chance and then you don't take it. That is your fault. Now, there's a lesson in life, isn't it? If you want to take responsibility, then, vote. Only a tiny percentage of 18 to 24 voted, says Les in Wanstead, picking up the point. Presumably they weren't organised or had no strong view on the matter. Have we let them down? Or has nobody let anybody down here? The people have had their say and now it must be respected. Let's talk to Simone in Wallington. Good morning to you, Simone. How do you feel about this?
Yes, good morning. I feel that my children are being very let down. I have two boys that are going to university at the moment, and they have worked very, very hard to get where they are. One of them is training to be a vet, and the other one is he's doing geography. And they felt that there was a bright future here. We all felt there was a bright future here. They have worked extremely hard to get all the way through their education, right from the beginning to the end. And, I've had quite a lot of boys in my house this weekend, and the silence and the doldrums was, you could just feel it. And I was chatting to most of them, and the very first thing they said, we felt let down by the elder generation, the elder population. They did say that. That wasn't me that picked up on that, actually, because I didn't really think about it before.
Simone, the first thing is to congratulate you for having a lot of young men around, and I know it's not easy. I've got kids the same age as yours. They're all girls coming around. So anyway, look, yeah. I completely understand that. Were you quite shocked at the vehemence of their reaction and the strength and the depth of their emotion?
Yes, I was. And I still am. My younger son, he stayed up and watched it all evening, and he sort of kind of has been following the campaign, and he sort of felt very nervous. He said, "I think there's going to be an out." And I said, "Well, come up about 4 o'clock in the morning and let me know what's going on." And he didn't. And then I knew then. I woke up and I thought, "Oh gosh, that's obviously bad news." And I went down and he was still sitting there. And the very first thing was, he said, "I've just been really let down. We voted out."
Why are they so worried about the future, Simone?
I think because that's something that has happened in my household, which is a fact. My mum died recently, and she had a property, and her main wish was to actually sell the property and to continue my children's education. And because my son's training to be a vet, she was hoping that he may be able to sort of do something with the money. And I've also looked at my house properties, and we know for a fact that they have gone down by 18%. A chain was pulled out on Friday, so I can't sell my mum's property now, which is fine. I know in the future that it probably will be, but that's just a part of it. I know it's a very small part of it, but it's the idea that they could see themselves actually going forward. We live in London; it's a very expensive area to live. Yeah. And there's lots of other things. Where I live is a very sort of like ethnic sort of area with lots of, Muslims, people and, black guys who come round here. Lovely, lovely boys. And, I treat them like my own. And, they fear for it as well, because it's not just, Remain. They feel it as well. They feel it very much as well. And they're very, very nervous.
So, Simone, we're still going to need vets. We're still going to need people to be educated. The country hasn't ground to a halt. House prices will probably pick up once again. I know that was quite a narrow point you made, but it's legitimate for you. In fact, we're talking to Justin Urquhart-Stewart a little bit later on. I might get that in about house prices. But can I just ask you very quickly, Simone, before we head off to the travel, did they all vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single one of them that I know, every single one of them voted. Out of probably 20, 30 guys that I know, one voted to exit out of 30 of them. I bet you they were jolly cross. I bet they'll be jolly cross when they find out that only a third of 18 to 24-year-olds actually did vote. Yeah, they probably will be. But I think that's a lot of naivety. I think we've had even I feel it myself. I feel that I've had so much thrown at me at such a short time that I think it's hit us very, very quickly, and I think a lot of people have been very confused. I do too, Simone. And I think that with the elder generation as well, and I think it's a big shock for people. And people that have actually voted out have actually now said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Yeah, well, this is something that we've talked about. I mean, the information was out there. We've talked about it on LBC. We talk about it all over the place. You can't blame the media or anybody else. If you just want to say when an expert is talking about the stuff that they're an expert in, if you want to say nonsense or government stooges, if you want to actually believe that, then I'm afraid this is you reap what you sow, in my opinion. But Simone, thank you very much indeed. Maria, we're going to be taking your call in just a moment. We're going to pop off to the travel now. How does Brexit affect the money in your pocket? We're going to talk to a personal finance specialist in just a moment. This is LBC. That's me. Good morning to you. It is exactly 10 to 8. You're with LBC. I'm with you all the way through till 10 o'clock this morning. Now, your calls, by the way, on the older generation. Have we let down the young? Don't look at me. Don't tell me you didn't have all the facts beforehand. We'll be talking about something like this all the way through. Great Britain. Have we lost a great out of Great Britain at 8 o'clock after a Paula Radcliffe tweet? So we'll have a little chat. So we'll continue this. Now, what we need at this time of turmoil and crisis is knowledge. We need experience. We need red braces. And we have it, all in one package. The Director of Seven Investment Management, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, is with us. Hello, Justin. Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew.
I don't want to have another week like that.
No, I hope we don't have another week like that. It's really quite amazing. No one could have... it was more like a Jeffrey Archer novel by the time we got to the end of the week, without a Prime Minister and the opposition in chaos as well.
What have you done with all your money, Justin?
Well, we actually made sure it was suitably protected, and I'm pleased to say it was okay. Our clients have actually found themselves in a position where they haven't actually lost any money over it, because we had just had to be very, very careful indeed. So it was actually looking at some of those areas which, were a bit more defensive, like a lump of gold, and some of those areas which actually they held their value despite the nerves. But the economy, you can see at the moment, it has already had an effect, this referendum, way before the referendum. It's actually taken away the vital word which runs an economy, confidence. Not completely, but just a little bit. And so it slowed it up. And so, unfortunately, unless we're going to get another boost of confidence, then I can see it actually continuing.
When might that be, Justin? Would that be the election of a new Prime Minister, in other words, a new leader of the Conservative Party?
If there's a new leader and he's able to, or she's able to actually inspire enough confidence to ensure there is more investment going on, because what we've seen is a lot of companies actually not bothering to invest yet because they wanted to hold off to see what's happening. We've seen the housing market, as one of your callers was saying earlier, finding some difficulty. The big institutional property market, barely any trades have been done. And one of the most worrying things that I watch quite carefully is the amount of inward investment coming into England and Wales and Scotland. And we were at record levels last year, and this year it's dropped off a cliff.
And Justin, what about the future of the City of London? And I know that this is something that we like to beat now and again. It's always good to hit the City of London. We see all these big wages and we don't like the look of it and all the rest, but they do provide, I believe it's 11% of the taxable income in this country comes from the City of London. Now, it's an important generator for us all. Will it move?
Yes,
somewhere else.
Yeah, you're quite right. Some of those salaries they pay, the package they are obscene, frankly, but that's a very small minority. What's going to happen to the City of London, and not just City of London, financial services across Britain, because big areas like Edinburgh, Leeds also have other key areas. What's going to happen? Banks will not move wholesale, just up sticks and off they go to Frankfurt or something like that. What will happen will be on two levels. One, you'll suddenly find that actually new departments, when they're set up, just probably won't be set up in Britain. And you won't notice that for a few years until you suddenly turn around and say, oh, it seems to have got a bit smaller. Then there's another area which you've just seen with HSBC. Because of regulatory changes, HSBC are going to have to reposition potentially 1,000 people outside the UK because the bank itself, it's a bit technical, won't be able to have the European passport to be able to operate throughout the whole of the EU. So again, this is one of those areas which really wasn't considered when, well, most people wouldn't have considered because it's highly complicated and technical, but a key issue for our banking service. Now, the reason why banking is actually so important, and accounting and legal, it's our biggest export. £65 billion every year. And so actually we're really rather good at it. We may hate bankers, loathe people with red braces, but on the other hand, actually they do actually contribute quite a lot to our economy.
We love people with red braces, and people with red braces live in nice big houses. Nice big houses need work to keep them going, etc. It's the nature of the economy. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, Director of Seven Investment Management, thank you for your time this morning. Sarah is in Croydon, rejoining the debate on the older generation. Have we let down the young? Sarah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. I was a bit cross coming in this morning. I'm calming down now. I'm just a little upset with things.
Okay. I mean, it infuriates. Well, I'm 23 years old, and it infuriates me that these young people are saying that the older generation have ruined everything, and I completely disagree. I mean, there's only a third of 18 to 24-year-olds that actually went out there and voted. If they were so worried about their future, why on earth did they not go out there and vote? Why did more of them not go and vote?
I have no idea, Sarah. I didn't realise that there was this apathy out there. Did they think that everything was going to be okay?
Well, this is the thing. If you want something to work, you go out there and you take action. They didn't take any action. They're blaming the older generation. They're forgetting that the older generation were once young and they joined the EU. Why on earth do they think that a lot of the older generation want to leave? If that doesn't signal something to you, then there's something seriously wrong. And one of your previous callers who called in talking about her son, this is the problem. People are only thinking about themselves. If her mother did not have the house to give the money to the son, what then? Her son would have to work, just like everyone else, work really hard.
Well, they are. No, he was training to be a vet, and the other one was studying geography at university. You can't criticise that. People do act in their own self-interest.
No, not criticising it at all. All props to them for working hard. But the thing is, they would have to work 10 times harder to try and afford a house that they really won't be able to afford. And it's going to be very difficult to go and pay off for a house that, well, in this lifetime, it really is.
And how do you think, why did you vote to leave?
I voted to leave because I wanted Britain to stand up on its own 2 feet and create more opportunities for themselves. People in Britain, this is meant to be Great Britain. We want to make it great again. You know, people need to get out there and start working and rebuilding the country. The thing is, there's people out there, immigrants who have come in, who have now got the stay, and they don't even want to remain in the EU. Now, if that's not telling you something, then I don't know what is.
Well, so it's 52 versus 48%. Sarah, great talking to you. I hope we can speak again. Sarah, very happy, young, very happy to leave and voted that way. Maria is in Greenford. Morning.
Morning, Andrew.
Hello.
I think these young people are just belly aching. That's what they're doing. If you, just as that woman said, if you wanted something to change, get up in the morning and go and put a cross on a piece of paper. They couldn't be bothered. They're moaning, I'm hearing that, they won't be able to travel. They won't be able to go to university abroad. Listen, most students do not go and study abroad. Most university students stay in this country and go to university here. Small minority go abroad. Just because we've left hasn't stopped them. It's just going to cost them a little bit more.
Maria, though, they feel a bit let down by things. That's the problem. They say, they were lied to over tuition fees. They've seen house prices rocket up and take them out of the equation. They can't get on the housing ladder. Jobs are no doubt going to be harder now. Pension pots have all been, cut. That generation is now confused. They're not getting anything that they want, and we don't want them angry, though, do we, Maria?
No, but Andrew, all those things you've mentioned, what the hell did that have to do with the EU? That was our government who started that off. It's our government that didn't build the houses. It's our government that's not giving them the jobs. And it's our government that's raiding the pension pot.
Maria, let's talk...
It's nothing to do with the older generation. It's to do with their government. The young people need to get up and vote in future.
Well, give them a chance to get up now, Maria. Thank you so much. Let's have another chat soon. That's in Greenford. Up in Watford, Pauline, last call on this particular subject. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I'll try to be quick. I have a three-part problem. Firstly, the government misled the people, especially the out votes of 3/5 to the NHS, and they're going to stop immigration in an effective way. They misled the older people, and yes, the older people voted without discussing with their young people the impact that it is likely to have on their future. And the 1/3 of the young people that did not vote also are to blame, so it's a tripartite. But really speaking, families should have been discussing this because it's the future of the young people. We, the older folk, should realize that we are in the past or in the current. It's their future. And really speaking, it's a three-part act in my view.
Pauline, speaking to a younger generation, I think that's a great point to actually leave it on and staying together as families. And a part of that is, well, should there be a second referendum? Almost 3 million people seem to think so. I'm not sure, though. MP David Lammy has suggested the referendum we've had is not, in fact, binding. Could you explain that to me? Why should we have a second one? Haven't we lost already those that wanted to stay in? And in a couple of minutes' time, is Britain still great?
We've seen half the population who said no thank you to inclusivity, and I thought that's what being great stood for.
Runner Paula Radcliffe says the vote to leave the EU means we just took the great out of Great Britain. All that, and Jeremy Corbyn has sacked his shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn. What is going on? Join me in conversation here on LBC. And a very good morning to you. Should there be a second referendum? Almost 3 million people seem to think that's a good idea. MP David Lammy has suggested the referendum we've had isn't binding. Let's do it all again, he says. Really? Why should we have a second one? We've lost, those of us anyway, who voted for Remain. Is Britain still great all by herself? We're going to talk about that now. Runner Paula Radcliffe says that the vote to leave the EU means we just took the great out of Great Britain. Let's talk about that. And Jeremy Corbyn has sacked his shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn just before a vote on a motion of no confidence from the Parliamentary Labour Party. Are they tearing themselves apart more than the Tories? We'll talk about that later. But the question for this hour is Britain still great? Before we get to that, I just want to finish off a couple of things that we had last time. It was quite a busy hour. We were talking about the young letting down the old, or actually the elder generation letting down the young. Just to finish this off again, and this is on Twitter. The young proved again they're good-for-nothing bums whose only effort is to do nothing and to retweet hashtags. Now, I don't subscribe to that view in any way, shape or form, to be quite honest, but there was voter apathy in that age group, so just to finish that one off. And Andrew, isn't it time our leaders or potential leaders stop telling us how bad it's going to be and start telling us what they're going to do to guide and lead us through this change, says Chris in Lancashire. Well, positively sort of going forward, I couldn't agree more. And somebody who hasn't put a name on this, I love this, and I have to read this to you. Lefty Biased Castle, LBC. I haven't been called Lefty. Might be biased. I haven't been called Lefty since I was a firebrand 20-something annoying everybody on the tennis circuit. So I much appreciate the insult. Really, really good. Right, Britain, still great. That is our conversation this hour here on LBC. Even by ourselves, can we still be Great Britain? Now, that tweet sent by Paula Radcliffe, one of our great sports women, after we voted to leave the EU. Just define great for me. I think great is having a voice and exercising it. That's what I think. That's my personal view. Great is abiding by rules and accepting the results and the consequences. Great. I think also, like that email that we had in, working together positively to move forward, to not look back. That's great. Listening to others that are experts, that's great. A lot of you didn't, and now you're regretting it. Second referenda, we'll discuss that. Accepting an expert's preeminence and how it is earned and absorbing what they say because you understand that they have earned the right to those opinions. That's great, isn't it? It's all so smart. So don't come whinging now. But I don't think we lose the great out of Great Britain. I think that's wrong. I've been on a jury of 12 people. You can't convince 12 people on a jury that white is white and black is black. That's going to do with race, either. White is white, black. You can't convince them. 12 people. And yet, here we have got over 30 million people have voted on a referenda, a very simple question, just an X in a box, and we've made up our mind that we want to go that way. So now we all have to go forward together with that. The world has not collapsed. We're going to take a hit economically. Did you not believe that when 88% of economists said all that? So that's the debate we're having. Is Britain still great? I'm not having that. Yes, we are. I'm not having that. But I'm happy to take your calls. 0345 6060 973. 84850 if you prefer to text early on in the morning, and tweet at LBC. OK, well, let's talk to Paul Nuttall now. He's the deputy leader of UKIP. Paul, you will be delighted this weekend, but what happens next?
Well, what happens next is Article 50 will be invoked, but that is down to the British government to do so, and we don't have to be pushed or bullied or cajoled by anyone within the European Union. Of course, you've got President Juncker of the European Commission and President Schulz saying it should be done immediately. But look, to be clear, the law surrounding this is simple. It's down to us to hand in a letter to the European Council and trigger it. So we're not going to be bullied. We'll take our time.
Yeah, but the thing is, Paul, have you not been listening to all the experts in this in the aftermath of your victory, and we congratulate you for it, the economic shock, whether you're talking to Justin Urquhart-Stewart, as I've just done, or whether you listen to President Obama, 88% of economists, the IFS, the IMF. I mean, seriously, have you not been quite shocked at the reaction, Paul?
No, not really. And this 88% of economists thing is a load of rubbish, because the Remain campaign sent out a form or an email to economists, 2,000 economists across the country, and only 14% of them got back. So it's 18% of the 14%. Okay, so it's not 88% of all experts at all. Look, we were always going to take a small economic hit, and it was only going to be for a short period of time. But you know what? It's short-term pain for long-term gain, because now the country has been confident enough, and this is great, to take back control of its own destiny, control of its own borders, control of its own laws, control of its own money. And do you know what the essence of great is? It's democracy. And we're taking back control of our democracy, because from now on in, we will make 100% of the laws in this country by people we elect, not faceless European commissioners. And beyond that, I would argue this. The only reason we joined this club in the 1970s is because Britain, in terms of confidence and greatness, was at its lowest ebb. We'd lost our empire and yet to find a role, and we scrambled around, and we came upon this European Union, or this European Economic Community, where Germany was going through an economic miracle. We wouldn't join now. Okay, there's no way on this planet, if we weren't in this club, we would have joined today, because Britain is great at this moment in confidence.
So you wanted to stop people coming to this country and reclaim it, not just the votes and all that sort of stuff. You were worried about immigration. That's the big ticket, right? Well, is that now? Are you now happy? Are we going to have to send people back home now? What's actually going to happen to this great country?
No, because people who are living here and working here are protected anyway by something called the Vienna Convention, which predates even our membership of the European Union, which goes back all the way to 1972. So no one's going to be repatriated. Nobody's going to be sent home. It's just a simple fact now that our own government will have the power, if they so desire, to say how many people we need or we want to come to our country. Australia do it, New Zealand do it, Canada do it, the United States do it. I just don't see why it makes us not great to let the British government do it as well. It's insane. And look,
so,
there's a great world out there. This isn't about little England versus Europe. You know, I would argue that they're little Europeans. The European Union is not just only the slowest growing economic bloc on the planet, but it's also inward looking. What we want to do is to reconnect with the rest of the world. And look, the Commonwealth only this year overtook the Eurozone in terms of trade, and by 2019 will overtake the whole of the European Union.
We'll see what pans out. Paul Nuttall says that this is a great country still. Professor Kate Williams, greatness, a historian. Good morning to you. Greatness is having a say and having a vote and having a voice.
Well, greatness is having a say and is having a vote and is having a voice. And what's very interesting is when you read the foreign media, which I've been tracking quite heavily, it's interesting what they're saying about us. America has been saying that because we're so rife with internal divisions, we probably can't step up to the table for big questions. Yes, I know we're only going to be rife with internal division for perhaps 2 years, but that's still a significant amount of time. And what's interesting about the Commonwealth, Paul, just about the Commonwealth just there, is that they are very concerned. I mean, we've always known that the Commonwealth may fragment after the Queen is no longer with us, but places like Australia are already saying, well, if Scotland is going, if Northern Ireland is also in turmoil, we don't see why we necessarily should be connected to this diminished country. Perhaps we should choose the EU rather than them. So the Commonwealth itself, I think, it's not just the Union that's under threat, which we see very clearly with how fast Scotland is moving at the moment, incredibly quickly how Nicola Sturgeon is moving and how what the Scottish people are saying. But it's also the Commonwealth itself is under threat, which hasn't really been much discussed in the newspapers because the Scotland and Northern Ireland has taken priority, but that is the case.
Kate, thank you very much for the moment. Paul Nuttall of UKIP is here this morning. Alone, isolationist, is that one of the prerequisites for being great for you, Paul, that we stand on our own 2 feet alone?
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, when we were at the apogee of empire, and indeed when our economy was at its strongest, was when we were in something called splendid isolation, which ran basically from the Crimean War to the Entente Cordiale of 1905. But anyway, besides that point, we're not on our own. We're still in NATO. We're on the UN Security Council, the G7, the G20, and all sorts of bodies all over the world. And we're the 5th largest economy on the planet. We are Great Britain. We are confident. We're not alone in the world. And as for the other Commonwealth countries, look, you know, the State Bank of India wanted Brexit. You know, and India is going to be the 2nd largest economy on the planet, and the State Bank wanted it because we only do 1.5% of our trade with India, which is pathetic. We want more trade with India. That's where our future lies.
Last month, 65 billion left. Tata Steel deal is now under threat, and there is more and more. I could go on. I could list all of these things, Paul. That is the threat that we face. That is the reality. The inward investment into this country will decline. The economic shock that you are dismissing is going to hit us like a ton of bricks.
No, it's not. It's going to be short term. And by the way, it's only one investor out of 14 who's saying that about a potential investor out of 14 who's saying that about Tata Steel. Do you know, we're a great country. It isn't going to hit us. And I think that what we're going to see now is a manufactured crisis in an attempt to try to bounce us either into the second referendum or indeed a snap general election. The British people have spoken. And isn't it interesting that in the last hour you were talking about young people being angry about voting in this referendum because 75% of them...
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around.
Only 43% of young people between 18 and 24 bothered to get off the backside and go out and vote. So if they've got anyone to blame for this, they should be blaming themselves, not old people or anybody else.
Yeah, we've kind of had that this morning. Thanks ever so much for your time this morning. That's Paul Nuttall, Deputy Leader of UKIP. Positively and going forward, Professor Kate Williams, I mean, where does this leave Great Britain? If you put this into a historical context, perhaps there is no historical context really, but some people are worried that we've lost the great out of Great Britain.
Well, we certainly seem to be using the United out of the United Kingdom. Certainly that's true, not just with Scotland, Northern Ireland, and as we know that we talked in 2014 when Scotland was talking about devolution, it does bring up the question for other parts of the country. We talked about, when it was Scotland, people talked about a Northern English Assembly. There were serious conversations about Wales and also Cornwall. We don't know what's obviously going to happen, but they will be raised as questions. So, and the Great Britain, well, Britain has been getting larger in terms of landmass, in terms of influence, ever since it's beginning. We had the Union of Britain, we had the growth of empire, until Britain ruled a quarter of the population at the end of the Victorian period. And I think that a lot of its prosperity during the post 1945 was due to the Marshall Plan, but also due to the Victorian greatness that we still had. I mean, the empire is no longer with us. The Commonwealth, as I said, was always in the way of fragmenting, and that's going to be accelerated now. So the problem we have, I think, is that the future is so very uncertain. It's economically incredibly uncertain. I think even the most supportive, we've just seen people saying it's obviously a blip, but I mean, we are fortunate that the bank pumped so much money into propping up the pound. 250 million pounds worth of our money or from our debt has been pumped in, so that's a benefit, but still we know that there's economic turmoil. I don't know what we're going to see in terms of the markets opening on Monday. So we have this economic turmoil. The Scotland leaving us. The future, I think, is very, very uncertain about what we have, and I think certainly we are diminished in terms of landmass and diminished in terms of influence, and it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for us to get back to the position that we have been. At the moment, we are, I think, severely diminished in terms of what we have and in terms of how we're seen by the rest of the world.
Professor Kate Williams, thank you very much indeed this morning for setting the scene, really, and laying the foundations for the chat that we're having this hour. Is Britain still great, even by herself? Are we a diminished power after the vote to leave the European Union? Or is that too dramatic for you? 0345 60 60 973, 17 minutes past 8. Breaking news, actually, this morning. Up to half of the shadow cabinet is set to resign in a bid to force Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn to step down. Those are the reports that are coming in overnight, of course. The shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn dismissed from his position for his role in encouraging other shadow cabinet ministers to rail against Jeremy Corbyn. Talking to Tim Farron, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, in a few minutes' time. Tim Marshall is here as well, and we'll be talking more about Labour's woes after 9 o'clock this morning. It's busy once again. 18 minutes past 8. Let's have a look at the travel.
This is LBC.
We're still Great Britain, aren't we? That's what we're called. Why would we be less great when we've actually all had our say? 52-48, OK? When I lost all my tennis matches, and if I lost, I didn't have another go. We might talk about a second referendum with Tim Marshall now, foreign affairs analyst, one of my favourite journalists as well. I love watching him on the telly, and here he is, right in front of me now. What a morning, Tim. Good morning to you.
Well, what a 48 hours. It's a whirlwind roller coaster and any other cliche you want.
It really is. Now, what about Labour and what's been happening? What have you heard in the last half an hour? What's your gut instinct?
That at least half of them will go. Today,
the shadow
cabinet, because Mr. Corbyn sacked Mr. Benn overnight for disloyalty. Margaret Hodge is busy organising a vote of no confidence in Mr. Corbyn, and today is decision day for your future career. Are you one of the cabinet members that stuck with Mr. Corbyn, who may or may not die an untimely political death, or are you going to be the ones that stood up and said, you know what, we've had enough, even though he might remain, we can no longer stand with him?
Is there now a critical mass of people that makes Corbyn's position as leader untenable?
No, there's a critical mass in the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, which is prepared to say to the country and the membership, look, we're here, we know what's going on, and it's just enough is enough. But the critical mass in the outside of the Parliamentary Labour in the country, with all the tens of hundreds of thousands of people that voted for Mr. Corbyn, that probably still has a majority. And so no matter what happens today, they're still going to be at war with each other, because even if you manage to get rid of Mr. Corbyn, he can stand again, and he would probably get in again.
Let's talk to Peter Hitchens now, journalist and author, broadcaster, Mail on Sunday journalist, I should say, for accuracy. Peter, very good morning to you.
Morning to you.
What do you make of these latest developments? It's happened awfully quickly, but everything is this week.
Well, they're partly just a reflection of the fact that the political journalists are obsessed with trying to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And so is the Parliamentary Labour Party, and so is the Shadow Cabinet. They have been since Jeremy Corbyn was elected, and they go on and on and on and on about it as if it were new. This is just another pretext to have another go at Jeremy Corbyn. The problem for all these people is that the Labour Party members who elected Mr Corbyn will probably continue to do so. The other thing is a very poor pretext, because in this case, Mr Corbyn is actually a good deal closer, in his real opinions, to the majority of the country, which has just voted to leave the European Union, than are the Blairite Shadow Cabinet and the Blairite Parliamentary Labour Party, who are against leaving the European Union. So quite why Mr Corbyn should be unseated for being more in touch with Labour voters than they are, I have to say I don't know.
Well, Peter, though, he did say sort of reform and remain, but he wasn't...
Why don't the whole Parliamentary Labour Party resign, since they've just demonstrated beyond all doubt that Labour voters don't like them and don't agree with them?
Well, that's a very good point, Peter, because we're just hearing now that Heidi Alexander has just resigned.
I mean, resign as members of Parliament, not resign to try to get Jeremy Corbyn. Go away, because it's just been proved beyond doubt that they don't represent their constituents.
Well, then they don't have any voice whatsoever, then, do they?
If you want to get involved in this constant media campaign to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn, that's up to you. It's been ridiculous from the start. Jeremy Corbyn is leader of the Labour Party because members of the Labour Party want him to be leader of the Labour Party. That's up to the Labour Party. It's not for the media to tell the Labour Party who its leader should be. The Labour Party should decide that. It seems to me one should be more concerned about the fact that both major political parties now have officially policies which have been shown by an enormous and significant referendum to be wholly unrepresentative of the majority of the British people. We have no political party in this country which actually holds the view which 52% of the population holds.
Well, just away from the EU referendum.
Seems to me to be the thing everyone should be concerned about, not the fact that the Parliamentary Labour Party and the Shadow Cabinet don't like Jeremy Corbyn, which is about as much news as some people don't like Marmite.
But if the party have no confidence that Jeremy Corbyn can lead them to a parliamentary to an election victory. Yes.
The Parliamentary Labour Party is not the Labour Party. If the PLP were the Labour Party, then Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't be leader of the Labour Party. We know that.
Well, there's the split.
What is new in the fact that the Parliamentary Labour Party doesn't like Jeremy Corbyn? Nothing.
No, but that's why we're seeing
the Chinese don't like the Japanese either, but that's also, you wouldn't plaster that on top of a news bulletin.
So who's going to take the middle ground eventually? Because at the moment you've got Corbyn on the left, you've got Boris Johnson potentially as Prime Minister on the right. In the middle ground, there's an awful lot of people going, what the hell's going on?
Well, what is this stuff about the middle ground? Middle ground is a purely subjective claim made by people who are in charge. I'm on the middle ground, so because I'm in power. Or in office, it doesn't mean anything.
You have to accept there's a polarisation, though.
The important thing here is that, as I say, that a huge earthquake has taken place, and it's been demonstrated in the most spectacular way that the majority of the population hold views which are not shared by the political elite. Well, the old Bertolt Brecht joke about this is, of course, let's elect a new people, since they've let the elite down. But my view is let's elect a new elite, which is actually representative of the public, rather than totally unrepresentative as they are now. So both the major political parties, which are only kept going, let's face it, by subventions from dodgy billionaires, and when they're in opposition by government money, and by broadcasting rules which give them undue prominence, both these political parties should be got rid of. We need, more urgently than practically anything else, a general election to confirm in Parliament the results of the referendum, so that Parliament, instead of being, as it is now, wholly unrepresentative of the public, becomes representative of the public and could push through into legislation and action the decision of the referendum, rather than what is likely to happen now, a concerted campaign to frustrate the popular will by a devious elite.
Peter, what about this as a possibility? Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty is not invoked. The letter is not sent. So our formal exit from the European Union is not commenced. It's not begun. A general election is called with the promise of a second referendum, and the party that promises that wins. Second referendum. How's that for a theory?
Well, if it happens, it happens. I don't know, but there are all kinds of theories that possible. What I think is that a general election should be held in which the alliances formed during the referendum campaign, which were sensible and admirable Labour figures such as Gisela Stewart and Kate Hoey and Frank Field, were on the right side and the winning side, and those social and moral conservatives who took the same view have much more in common with each other than they do with the leaders of their political parties, combine into new parties which actually reflect the divisions in the country. What has been established now is neither the Labour Party nor the Conservative Party anymore represents or reflects the true divisions in the country. They need to go, and as I say, if they weren't kept going by dodgy billionaires and state funding and the BBC broadcasting rules, they would go. They're only kept alive by inertia. This is an opportunity. I can envisage many routes by which the elite, which still controls Parliament, the judiciary, the civil service, and much of the media, will try to frustrate the majority will of the public in this referendum. And I've always been very chary of referenda for precisely that reason. I said that the EU is like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. And there are many, many ways in which they could indeed try to frustrate it. But people should be aware of this. And one of the things they should be aware of is all this rubbish about whether Jeremy Corbyn goes or stays. It's utterly marginal to the point of, will the British Parliament actually do the bidding of the British people, or will it try to frustrate it?
Peter,
we're in for a constitutional crisis anyway. It might at least have the outcome that the people have shown in the biggest and most significant vote in this country for decades that they want.
Peter, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. You mentioned Hotel California. That's only 6 minutes and 17 seconds. This is going to go on seemingly for months and years, and this week feels like it's gone on for absolutely ages as well. I'll be taking the views of Tim Marshall, the Foreign Affairs analyst, superb broadcaster, a journalist as well. He's with me now on the latest news that Labour's Heidi Alexander has resigned from the Shadow Cabinet, following on from Hilary Benn, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, overnight in just a moment. Up to speed with all the news now, though, with Glenn Moore at 8:30. This is LBC.
In the last few minutes.
Busy old morning. 8:33 is the time. Andrew Castle here. Tim Marshall, Foreign Affairs analyst, is alongside me, and I'll be getting a comment from him in just a moment. This is the letter from Heidi Alexander, the Shadow Health Secretary. Heidi Alexander MP, Member of Parliament for Lewisham East. Very formal-looking letter. This is her resignation letter from the Shadow Cabinet, just delivered moments ago to Jeremy Corbyn, the office of. Those who will be hit hardest by the economic shock associated with the vote to leave the EU need a strong opposition, as do those communities who fear rising levels of intolerance, hatred and division. More than ever, our country needs an effective opposition which can hold the government to account and which is capable of developing a credible and inspiring alternative to an increasingly right-wing and backward-looking Conservative Party. As much as I respect you as a man of principle, I do not believe you have the capacity to shape the answers our country is demanding, and I believe that if we are to form the next government, a change of leadership is essential. So a huge amount of momentum gathering against, from the Parliamentary Labour Party anyway, gathering against Jeremy Corbyn this morning. Your views, Tim Marshall?
You do not have the capacity to lead. Ouch! I mean, that's in political speak, that's pretty damning.
It's same as Margaret Hodge yesterday saying, demonstrating that you don't have the qualities of leadership and didn't start quick enough, campaigned in a half-hearted way, etc.
It's the polite way of saying, I think you're an idiot. Which many of them do think he's not very bright. I'm not passing judgment on that. I'm just passing judgment on what Labour MPs tell me when they talk about him in private and increasingly in public. Peter Hitchens was right. They are out to get him, and this is an opportunity. But I would argue that he has given them extra ammunition. I mean, his performance since the vote result has been poor. He has not shown leadership and gone out at the front. He went to the Gay Pride rally yesterday, but didn't say anything to people. And a very senior London Labour person who likes him said, this is not the time just to walk away from the debate. And then he was heckled in what might have been a PR stunt. The Observer today, because I'm also here to do the papers, has got a very interesting full-page editorial, and the headline is the best bit about it. We ignored the left behind. That failure could still break Britain. What that means is that slowly it's seeping through to people in London that it's not the country, that if you try to socially engineer a country too quickly and don't listen to the people that you're socially engineering, which is what's happened in the last 10 years, they will stop listening to you. And a majority of them did stop listening or became unengaged. Briefly, Andrew, going back to the last hour about the youth vote, if you look at if you add it up one way, about 60% of Britain's youth either did not vote, when I saw 18 to 24, either did not vote or voted to leave the United Kingdom. So if you frame it by a few very well-meaning students who go down to Westminster and wave placards and say, we've been cheated and it's all the old people's fault, if you frame it like that and ignore everyone else, you're not telling the true story of Britain, and it is the left behind. Look at the top 5 Leave votes, and they were all areas where the average salary is around 18 grand. It hasn't worked for them. No one's listened to them, and now Britain has got its answer. And I'm not making a case for or against, but that Observer editorial acknowledges that we ignored the left behind.
More from the papers with Tim Marshall in just a moment. Tim Farron, MP, leader of the Liberal Democrats, is on the line. Tim, very good morning to you. Another busy morning in politics. I wonder if you would give me a response to the departure of Hilary Benn, first from the Shadow Foreign Cabinet, and also just a few moments ago, Shadow Health Secretary Heidi Alexander.
Well, it's hugely frustrating. And I am somebody who's genuinely heartbroken by the result in the early hours of Friday morning. What we don't need is political parties spending their time considering who leads them and looking instead at how we lead the country. My great fear is that in the last 2 days it's been clear that what was called Project Fear has turned out to be Project Massive Understatement, as we've seen our economy shrink to now be smaller than France's, the pound in our pocket down by about 15 pence, and already plenty of jobs at risk. What we don't need is lots of political shenanigans. What we need is a clear lead as how Britain can move forward from this point.
Yeah, indeed. And now there's this petition which has gained almost 3 million votes for a second referendum. But as Nigel Farage said, it ain't best of 3.
Yes, fair enough. I mean, my sense is we have to, and I do, respect the outcome of the referendum, but I hope people forgive me if I say that I don't agree with it. I passionately don't agree with it. I think what has been said to the outside world is that Britain is an insular, inward-looking country that doesn't want to be important, and on the inside, in terms of our people across the United Kingdom, the hardship that is now beginning will mean that those people who sold the Leave position, Farage, etc., are going to be proven wrong very quickly. And as we've seen, lots of anecdotal evidence of massive buyer's remorse already. So the Liberal Democrats absolutely will respect the outcome of the referendum. I don't think Parliament has a right to snub the electorate, but I think I have the right, in fact I think I have the duty, to go to the people whenever the election is and say, if you would like to be in the European Union, this is your chance to do so. Support the Liberal Democrats, and we will try and undo what has been done.
How would that be?
Well, it all depends on when the election would come, but, in one sense, I shouldn't be telling you anything terribly surprising. The Liberal Democrats have had in our manifesto that we should be in the European Union since every election from 1955. All I'm saying is it'll be in the next one too. Obviously, next time it'll be even more important because people have the opportunity to vote if it comes before we leave the EU, for us to reconsider, if it's afterwards, to potentially begin negotiations to rejoin.
When do you expect the election to be? I know we're looking at, it's Sunday morning after what happened on Thursday and into Friday, and what seems to be happening by the minute just at the moment in Westminster with all the ructions and everything else. But how do you think that this is going to actually pan out? I mean, you're looking ahead as a party. You've stated once again that you're sticking with your policy about being in the EU. You're going to try and make that happen, Tim. But when are you planning for a general election?
Well, we need to be ready for one imminently. And my sense is that there are various options. We could end up going to 2020. I think at the moment people are assuming that won't happen. But I think at the moment, trajectory is to a May 2020 election. That's what the Fixed Term Parliament Act would indicate. But if there's a change of Conservative leader, which obviously there's going to be, then that person may seek to take an earlier opportunity. So, it could be this year, it could be next year, or it could be 2020. When I look at this, all I know is at the moment my country is suffering enormous harm and damage because of lies peddled by a Farage agenda that I don't accept, and at least 48% of the electorate don't accept. I suspect that figure is higher this morning. And I did believe that the country needs leadership, and I'm determined to provide it and give people an opportunity to get away from the hideous outcome that we got on Friday morning.
And who do you expect, Tim, to be the Prime Minister going into that general election? Let's just imagine that it's this year.
My goodness, well, your guess is as good as mine, Andrew. I don't know. I think in many ways, I would not want to be Boris Johnson or Michael Gove at this moment. I'm not sure if they expected to win this referendum, and they made all sorts of outlandish promises about £350 million extra a week for the NHS, and indeed an implied promise that immigration would be turned back almost instantly. Neither of those things are the case, and I think there'll be lots of people out there, I know there are lots of people out there, who will feel betrayed by the people who sold them the Leave option, as they now realise it isn't what they voted for. So I think people say, and the bookies suggest, that Boris Johnson is the favourite, but I think he may very quickly become relatively toxic because of the lies he peddled now being clearly seen as being lies.
Well, we'll see what happens next. Thanks for your time this morning. That's Tim Farron, MP, leader of the Liberal Democrats. And as he was talking about Boris Johnson, and Tim Farron saying that I wouldn't want to be Boris Johnson this morning, in the Mail on Sunday, "Oh, Boris, you made my kids cry and it's all my fault." This is by Rachel Johnson, his sister. "My son's friends are saying Boris has stolen their futures." She said, she actually begins by saying, if you think a week is a long time in politics, then you should be in the Johnson household. I can just imagine. Let's take a call from Joanna in Perryvale. We started this out with, is Britain still great? Frankly, it was always going to be about the EU. Are we greater or are we diminished after the vote? Joanna, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for taking my phone call. Yes, and allowing me to introduce myself. So I will start my talk from the end, which I plan to talk about at the end. So I think that Europe needs a strong Britain. Europe needs a British Britain as a Great Britain, even on its own. And so thinking about the Brexit, which I was not the advocate I wanted to remain, but thinking about this, I really hope that the government and the leadership will be, which is not now going to become new leadership. They will do everything in the interest of British people and the interest of this country. The problem is, which I see right now, this Brexit results were so unexpected and surprised by many other, or maybe even underestimated, that this idea what Britain would like to become to was never pronounced. That is the problem. I can't see an idea for Britain right now, all around the economy, all around the world.
But Joanna, you're half Polish, aren't you?
Yes, I'm half Polish, and I do hold as well the British nationality, so I was entitled to vote.
Well, I'm British, and I'm also European still. And just because we're not in the EU doesn't mean that I'm not European. Can I ask you, when you walk around, just in your daily life, do you feel less welcome now?
I must admit, of course, not always people know that that I've got a British nationality. They most of the time are looking at me from the perspective of the Polish people. And just straight away on Friday, when the announcement was reached that once the Polish builders will finish my bathroom, they are ready to go. So that's kind of very unpleasant behind my back stories I've heard, but. Yes, so this is very, very unkind. But on the other hand, because I'm the Christian, and remembering myself entering the Europe, just entering UK, just before Britain joined Britain opened that 50, the tractor number 50, the 50 rule, just before I entered before 2004, and I remember how the British citizens were. Really, I must say that they were very merciful to allow accommodation of Polish people, but then the Polish people became a very, very hardworking and with a very good, reliable working ethos.
No doubt.
So yes, so I'd like to really stand up for them because at this moment that's
You know, you've done it, Joanna, and I must say I must go now, but I certainly appreciate your call this morning. News still filtering in from the Labour Party. Heidi Alexander, Shadow Health, has resigned from the cabinet and has said that Jeremy Corbyn is not the man to provide effective leadership to the Conservative Party and take the Labour Party on into the election. Labour spokesman quoted, "There'll be no resignation of the elected leader with a strong mandate from the membership." That's a Labour spokesman just minutes ago. So it continues. I'm sure Tim Marshall, who's been beavering away on his phone as well as looking at the newspapers this morning on this fast-moving day. I'll take the views of Tim in just a moment. It's 8:47. We'll have a quick look at the travel. Sunday morning. Tony says this morning by text, "Hi Andrew, we will see a breakdown in public order if the referendum is blocked by MPs." Well, no suggestion of that just at the moment, but a second referendum has been talked about, and that petition gaining 3,000 votes overnight. The breaking news out of the Labour Party: Hilary Benn, the shadow foreign secretary, sacked by Jeremy Corbyn because of his garnering of support for the no confidence motion, which is apparently taking place on Monday. There was a secret ballot for that, but they've certainly put that on the table, a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party tomorrow. Latest news, Heidi Alexander, the Shadow Health spokesperson, has resigned. Well, not spokesperson, Shadow Health Secretary, has resigned, and the letter was unforgiving to say the least, and vitriolic, really, against Jeremy Corbyn. The Labour Party have responded by saying there will be no resignation of an elected leader with strong mandate from membership. And strong, no doubt. I was talking to a young man from Momentum, which is on the left of the party, and very, very powerful support for Jeremy Corbyn. And the more people have a go at him, the stronger he becomes. So this morning, and for the last few minutes, we have focused on Jeremy Corbyn. So the focus is that way, instead of the Conservative Party at the moment, who are going to need to elect a new leader and a new Prime Minister, therefore. So it is, it's all going on. Tim Marshall is a foreign affairs analyst. Is there anything in the papers apart from all of this?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the Daily Star is to be congratulated for its front page, which says, EU beauties, Wales win Battle of Britain as England up for another victory in Europe. Because I guarantee you, by tomorrow afternoon, ahead of the England game, a lot more people in this country will be turning their attention to that than they will be to the referendum. So it's quite a brave move, but I'm not sure the Daily Star fundamental readership follows politics that closely. No. And there was a wee one that caught my attention as well. Done. Page 19 of The Observer, a headline writer's had some fun. Barbara Ellen, the columnist, is suggesting that if you're fed up with the mud at Glasgow, you could pave it over, or you could put some of that fake grass down. So the headline writer has written, "Give Glastonbury some fake grass," which I think is probably deliberately ambiguous.
A little bit ambiguous, no fake grass.
But the rest of it is just... Oh, well, it's The Sun, page 9, "We're boomed," which is quite clever. Not "we're doomed," we're boomed. Small businesses rejoice. That's their view of, that the economy is actually going to be fine. But no, it's politics all the way. Really.
No fake grass at Wimbledon. That kicks off tomorrow. We're going to be speaking to James Ward a little bit later on, the British player, who will be stepping out against Novak Djokovic on centre.
Only the real stuff at Wimbledon.
Only the real stuff at Wimbledon, you bet. I'm going to talk to Alistair Campbell now. Delighted to welcome you to LBC. Alistair, and a very good morning to you. I noted just the other day that you were talking about the roots of the problem that we're seeing in the Labour Party might have started in the 2008 financial crisis, and how the working class have not been represented. Are we seeing an eruption of almost a mini revolution in the Labour Party now?
I don't think it's just the Labour Party. I think across the country, I do feel that what happened after the crash is that a lot of people who felt that the people who caused the crash, the kind of rich money men, got away with it. Only one American, as far as I know, went to jail for what was actually an extraordinary criminal conspiracies all over the place. And particularly, from the UK context, with 6 years of George Osborne's austerity, a lot of people felt really, really badly damaged and hurt by it. And I think when it came to the referendum, and this is why I was always, to be honest, against having the referendum, because it's very rarely about what's on the ballot paper, people just thought, right, this economy that Cameron and Osborne keep going on about, that's so fantastic that we're trying to protect, I don't feel the benefits of it. And so I think there was that. I think there's also been a sort of a lot of anger at the political classes. I think that there's also the factor of, we've had like 2 or 3 decades now of relentless anti-Europeanism in most of the popular newspapers. And, so I think we're now into a situation where all the political parties have been confronted by a reality that now gives them real difficult choices. You've obviously seen within the Conservatives, the Prime Minister's going to fall over this, which is pretty extraordinary in itself. In Scotland, you have a situation now where the SNP, having had a majority in the for Remain, now feel they can have a second referendum. And I think what's coming through very strongly in the Labour Party, and this I think has been coming on over some time, is a feeling that the new membership that helped to elect Jeremy Corbyn, completely out of touch with the voters that we actually lost and need to get back.
There'll be no resignation of an elected leader with a strong mandate from the membership, says Labour this morning, but there is certainly a momentum against him. He won't go politely and by himself, will he?
I don't know, but I mean, look, I don't know him that well. I know him a little bit, but I said on Friday that sometimes leadership, one of the most important acts of leadership, is to ask yourself honestly, can you lead? Can you do the job? And I think that we're in a situation now where, as a result of this referendum and the vote and the outcome and the consequences, and what is absolutely extraordinary, I wrote a piece yesterday for the International Business Times where I made the point that so-called Project Fear, if anything, we're slightly underestimating the impacts. This is now going to be, we're now entering a period of real uncertainty and instability. Sorry if this provokes people to say Project Fear again. It could even lead to a sense of chaos, because I think that there are consequences. We've had a campaign, and it was an incredibly dismal, dispiriting campaign because of the lies that were told by the Leave side, because of these simple slogans without any policies to back them up. Those slogans are now going to be taken into detailed negotiations all across the European Union, which are incredibly complicated, where options aren't clear. And I think you're also seeing, I live in one of the most pro-European areas of the country, which is northwest London, but even here yesterday, I was going around the place meeting people who had voted Leave and who were saying the most extraordinary things to me. I actually had one woman say to me, I didn't realise if you vote Leave, it meant we would leave. And it's like people saying, oh my God, what have we done? Now, there will be people in the 52% who think we've done the right thing. Now, fair enough, they may believe it. But we're heading now through a period of economic uncertainty, political uncertainty. And the other thing, I think this is what's driving the feelings in the Labour Party. If Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister, which is possible, don't think it's probable, but it's possible, then he's going to have a snap election. And the Labour Party's got to be honest. Are we currently in a position to win a general election?
But that must be why everybody is moving now. I note we haven't heard from Angela Eagle and Andy Burnham just yet. They're high-profile members of the shadow cabinet, which met almost immediately. Do you see a momentum building now, which will go on throughout the day, or are those who have come out against Corbyn publicly now, will they be the only ones, or do you expect more?
Well, how many have there been any apart from Hillary?
Heidi Alexander, obviously Jeremy Corbyn. Hillary Benn overnight.
Yeah. I mean, I think that. Look, I know that there is a lot of dissatisfaction, and I also know that even though it's true that a lot of the new members who joined up to support Jeremy Corbyn and help him become leader, a lot of them still support him. But I do know, and I knew during the campaign, new members who were saying, most of the new members actually weren't out campaigning, they weren't leafleting, they weren't knocking on doors, but those that were, a lot of them were saying to me, this isn't working, and we know that. And I think that the thing about politics is that people sort of, these are human beings here, and there are people there. I mean, I'll be honest, I couldn't work for this current leadership because it's going nowhere. It can't win a general election. And also it doesn't actually stand for a lot of things that I believe in. And this idea that yes, we've been losing working class vote for some time now, okay? And I'm not going to pretend that some of that isn't to do with things that we did. But may I say, because I saw Jeremy Corbyn the other day talking about this has been successive governments failing to do things for working people. The stuff that we did in terms of schools and hospitals, Sure Start, the minimum wage, we did a lot for working families tax credit. the idea that he just sort of lumps us in as some kind of, Tory-like government is a complete nonsense, and it's actually it's a betrayal of what the Labour Party has done in government. But the reality is, he did not, far from winning back working class voters in the north of England and Wales and the Midlands, he pushed them further away.
Yeah. Well, it's all unravelling rather just at the moment. Overnight, of course, Hilary Benn going, Heidi Alexander going this morning. We've got the potential vote of no confidence going forward with the Parliamentary Labour Party tomorrow. We'll see what happens. It's very fast moving. Certainly appreciate your time this morning. That's Alistair Campbell, former Director of Communications under Tony Blair. It really is the most extraordinary morning, and we're going to continue the debate now. Tim Marshall is with me and will stay. And now, Shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn has been sacked. So another member of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, Heidi Alexander, has gone this morning. We'll be looking at the implications after she said this of Mr Corbyn: "I do not believe you have the capacity to shape the answers our country is demanding." So tell me, what problems do you need the Labour Party to solve? Do you think they have the answers? Tim Marshall is with me, and the conversation continues here on LBC. My name's Andrew Castle. Time, 9 o'clock, Sunday morning, and it's a busy one. So, Shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn has been sacked. That happened overnight. Another senior member of Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, Heidi Alexander, Shadow Health, has quit this morning, saying of Mr Corbyn, "I do not believe you have the capacity to shape the answers our country is demanding." So tell me, what problems do you need the Labour Party to solve? Should we be even thinking about the Labour Party at this point? Tim Marshall is with me this morning to discuss these issues and other bits and bobs which are in the newspaper as well. But of course, it's politics that dominates in the wake of the referendum result, which has sent an earthquake through British politics. Where is this all going to end up? It's only 4 minutes past 9 on a Sunday morning, and it's been jolly busy since Thursday for everybody. The Prime Minister has stepped down, or he's going to resign. He wants a new man in place by party conference in October. Who will be the next Prime Minister, of course? And we did say, and we did pose the question some time ago, that in the wake of the EU referendum, whichever way it went, what would happen with the Labour Party as well? The Conservatives have always been divided over Europe, and now look what has happened after this 52-48% vote, this seismic vote for generations on Thursday. What has happened to the Labour Party? Are we seeing an implosion that will see Jeremy Corbyn step down as leader of the party? Hilary Benn was hugely respected, the shadow foreign secretary. He has now gone. And now Heidi Alexander, news emerging in the last half an hour or so, that she also is quitting. And let's be honest, the letter, I do have the letter here, the letter that she wrote, when it says, "Dear Jeremy, those who will be hardest by the economic shock associated with the vote to leave the EU need a strong opposition as to those communities who fear rising levels of intolerance, hatred and division. More than ever, our country needs an effective opposition which can hold the government to account and which is capable of developing a credible and inspiring alternative to an increasingly right-wing and backward-looking Conservative Party. I do not believe you have the capacity to shape the answers our country is demanding." So what questions do we need answers to from the Labour Party at this point? 0345 6060 973. On a busy morning for politics, get involved in the conversation with me. You can text on 84850. Tim Marshall is with me, a foreign and domestic affairs analyst and journalist, and I'll take his view in just a moment. But let's get the views now of Ben Bradshaw, Labour MP for Exeter, former Culture Secretary. Ben, very good morning to you. What a busy old day it is for your party. What do you make of it?
Well, I think this is inevitable, Andrew, given the catastrophic defeat in the referendum campaign which Jeremy Corbyn led, not just because of his lacklustre approach to that huge question for our country, but the probability now that we'll be facing a general election in the autumn. And I think colleagues have just thought very hard about this and reflected very carefully as to whether he has the right skills, as Heidi Alexander's statement that you've just read out, the right skills not only to take us into an election and win it for Labour, but also to steer
our main opposition party through these very turbulent waters, this earthquake that's hit us, the unprecedented uncertainty. We need a strong, competent centre-left political party led by somebody who is competent and has those skills. And I think people just realise that he hasn't got them.
But Ben, he's extremely popular, isn't he? I mean, the division in your party is so clear now, isn't it? That, you know, the young, the left, Momentum, they think he's absolutely fantastic. He's almost a messiah figure for some. And yet the Parliamentary Labour Party don't seem to be able to stand him.
I think the referendum has changed all that. I mean, I've spent the whole weekend in my constituency talking to Labour voters and Labour Party members, many of whom voted for Jeremy Corbyn and now regret it. They're angry, a lot of them actually, particularly the young ones who are very pro-European at his hopeless referendum campaign. And I think they recognise too that if he is still there at the time of an autumn election, that Labour will go down to its most catastrophic defeat ever in our history. We'll lose scores of members, of good members of Parliament. And I think that is focusing not only the minds of my colleagues on the front bench, but also Labour Party members and supporters all across the country.
Ben Bradshaw, a source has told us that we could have a resignation from the shadow cabinet every hour. Have you heard similar?
No, I'm not a member of the shadow cabinet. I'm not in the front bench, but I would hope and expect that those shadow cabinet members who have reached the same conclusion as Heidi Alexander and who care about the Labour Party and the future of the Labour Party. We're talking about the survival of the Labour Party here and about what's in our country's interest. It's really important at this time that our country has a strong and competent centre-left opposition party to hold the government to account. There's a vacuum of leadership in our country at one of its most perilous times in our history, and I think there is general public concern about that. The mood in the wake of the referendum is really interesting. I've never experienced anything like it in my life before. Absolutely chaotic, and the public are crying out for leadership. Both from the government but also from the opposition. And when we haven't got it at the moment, and we've got to get it pretty fast, particularly if we're going to be fighting an election as well as handling this momentous aftermath of the referendum.
Just briefly then, Ben, do you expect Jeremy Corbyn to go? The statement has said that he won't go, and he's still very popular and has that mandate. You won't expect him to go voluntarily, would you?
Well, if he doesn't go, he will be destroying the party that he claims to love and has claimed to work for all of his life. I think any intelligent person with any self-intelligence knows that he cannot lead us into the next election, and that if he does, the Labour Party will suffer a catastrophe. So I think hanging on stubbornly at this stage would be the very worst thing for him. It would certainly be a catastrophe for the Labour Party, and it would be very bad for Britain.
Ben Bradshaw, thank you very much indeed. Labour MP for Exeter, former Culture Secretary, with his views on what's happening in the Labour Party this morning. Tim Marshall is with me, a foreign and domestic affairs analyst. This is happening awfully quickly. I woke up this morning and put the phone on and saw that Hilary Benn had gone. I mean, there was that dispute, wasn't there, between Hilary Benn and Jeremy Corbyn over the Syria vote last year. Yeah. You knew there was always tensions, but Hilary Benn is a man of some esteem, both in the party and outside, and he's got the name as well.
Very well respected, very well liked, and he's a very personable man. I've met him several times, and he's a very, very nice chap. Well, you think it's fast-moving. You wait to see the news. If, I'm not saying...
What you got?
Diane Abbott for Shadow Foreign Secretary. No, really. I mean, and it's quite telling that you didn't laugh, but I mean, it does seem quite outlandish because she's not, she doesn't bestride British politics like a colossus. But I think
she's an interesting character, clearly intelligent, a great survivor, and an interesting story.
Yeah, all that things. Right, so if she's Shadow Foreign Secretary, and then they've still got the Shadow Chancellor and the leader, they go into an election, which I agree with Mr. Bradshaw, there's probably going to be one within 9-10 months. They're going to just go into meltdown, at which point the party will split, at which point there'll be a formation of a new centre-left party, and then the Corbynites are left in charge of the rump Labour Party, which is fine, because they always wanted a nice big party machine to take control of and have. Briefly, an MP, a Labour MP has just been on your programme calling his own leader lacklustre and hopeless. I mean, that's how bad things have got. Briefly, here's the rules for how you elect. Go ahead.
Let me just get to that in just a second, Tim. Thank you ever so much for the contribution. Just for the moment, I want to join and take the views of John McTernan now. He's a commentator, he's a strategist, has worked with Tony Blair and so many others besides. I'd love to get his views on what has been a fairly tumultuous morning. Good morning to you, John. Where's the Labour Party going from here? Have you been surprised at the pace of it all?
Well, under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, as he's put it, he always says it this way, the Labour Party is going nowhere fast. He's got to go. I'm not surprised at the speed of the action. I am surprised, in a sense, by the incompetence of the Corbyn operation. The fact that Hilary Benn is a high-profile sacking is because Corbyn wanted to sack him in his reshuffle and didn't have the backbone, the spine to do it. So it's a major event that Corbyn has sacked Hilary Benn, and now the notion that Diane Abbott is in any way an adequate substitute shows you the lack of depth to the support that it has in the Parliamentary Labour Party. And I have to say, if that is the quality of the thinking that's going on in Corbyn's office, who are they going to get to replace Heidi Alexander and whoever else resigns from the Shadow Cabinet? I expect a spate of resignations now from the Shadow Cabinet. This is definitely put up or shut up time on the Labour backbench. And the thing I would say is I don't see Corbyn now lasting as leader into any election this year.
And yet he is enormously popular and has an amazingly strong mandate. And the more you attack him, it was a point that I made earlier to Alistair Campbell, the more that you attack Jeremy Corbyn, the more, particularly on the young and the left, seem to view him as a messiah figure, if you will.
Well, he didn't have a mandate for being utterly useless, and that's why he's been. He didn't have a mandate for losing a third of all Labour voters and therefore contributing extraordinarily to Britain leaving the European Union. All that he got was a victory on one day last year. Well, he's had his chance. You can't keep people in jobs in which they are not suited. He's totally unsuited to this job. He cannot speak in public. He's not popular with the public, and that's where you have to win elections. You don't win elections amongst Labour Party members, general elections, because Labour Party members are going to vote Labour anyway. And the young and the radical have been betrayed by Jeremy Corbyn. They did not vote for him for Britain to leave the European Union. They've seen at the most important political decision that Britain's made since the war, they've seen that he cannot rise to the event. He cannot rise to speaking, to bringing people out, to convincing. We now are going to go through a hugely turbulent period economically, a hugely turbulent period politically, and what Labour needs is strong leadership. Ben Bradshaw is right, Heidi Alexander is right, and I'm sure many other Shadow Cabinet members will echo the words of Ben and Hilary Benn and Heidi during the day. The landscape will look very different by evening. Given your experience, John, who has the qualities to lead the Labour Party? If you could be brief, I'd appreciate it. Well, the fact that Hilary Benn's been singled out for sacking suggests that Corbyn is the most scared of him, and Hilary Benn showed that last year. He's a Ben. He comes from a great political tradition, and that may well be attractive to the young of the left to elect a Ben to leader of the Labour Party. OK, thank you very much indeed. That's John McTernan speaking to us about the tumultuous events in the Labour Party this morning. Some of you are having a go at us for talking about this. This is the breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you do have to talk about. It's not having a go at the Labour Party. We're reporting the news which is coming out of the Labour Party, and we will continue to do so with Tim Marshall, the Foreign and Domestic Affairs Analysis. And I am posing this question. I promise you I will get to your calls on 0345 6060 973. What do you need to see from the Labour Party to regain your faith in that party? Or perhaps you've never lost it. We'll talk about that. We'll have a word with Tim about how you actually elect a leader, both the Conservative Party, i.e. new Prime Minister, and also the Labour Party in just a mo. Now, though, this Sunday morning, 17 minutes past 9 on LBC, a quick look at the travel.
LBC.
21 minutes past 9 is the time. Andrew Castle with you through until 10 o'clock this morning. Obviously, we're talking about Brexit. What happened on Thursday is sent shockwaves through the political world. Prime Minister went the following morning, or at least he's promised to resign by October, and Conservative Party conference. There will be a new leader there. That at least was his hope. And so we'll see who'll be the next Prime Minister. Will there be a snap general election after that? You've got Scotland calling for another independence referendum, or that is the expectation. It is on the table, as Nicola Sturgeon likes to say. And the fallout in England continues. The fallout in the Labour Party continues. Overnight, Hilary Benn, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, was sacked by Jeremy Corbyn this morning. Heidi Alexander, who impressed many during the doctors' dispute, has left Shadow Health, and she's written a letter to Jeremy Corbyn explaining why. And it's not good reading for him. There is talk this morning that Diane Abbott could be Shadow Foreign Secretary replacement, which you can have any reaction you like to, but it is certainly a sign that all the big news is coming out of the Labour Party just for this hour. God knows what will happen in the next hour. Jeff on Twitter says LBC is once again discussing the Labour Party. They're obsessed. Jeff, this is the story, my friend. And we will continue the debate. What do you need to hear from the Labour Party to settle your nerves? What do they need to solve? I mean, there's any amount of condemnation and criticism of Jeremy Corbyn, and yet he has an extremely strong mandate to lead the party. And he's not going anywhere, a Labour spokesman has said this morning. Tim Marshall is here to discuss the rules of replacing a leader on both the Conservative Party front and the Labour Party front as well. And concisely and neatly, and good luck.
I'll try. But can I briefly say John Kerry's coming to London tomorrow?
Yeah.
That again shows you, what a global crisis this is. He'll go on to Brussels afterwards. Right. If you want to be... because the rules have changed in the Labour Party. In the old days, if the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, thought they had no confidence in the leader, he or she simply had to go. It's different now because the rules have changed, because the mandate now comes from the party members. So even if half the Shadow Cabinet resigns today, and then there is a vote of no confidence which Mr Corbyn loses this week, in which it's clear that the MPs he has do not have any confidence in him, he still can fall and will fall back on, excuse me, I have a mandate from the vast majority of the members out in the country of the Labour Party. Not the voters, but the members of the Labour Party, 150,000 of them. My problem with that, briefly, is that they do represent 0.1% of the population, and they seem to represent that 0.1% of the population that doesn't understand this country. They were the ones who were saying, oh my God, I can't believe this result on Friday. Every time you tweet, I can't believe this result, you prove you don't understand your own country. On the Tories...
So just one second there. The Rebels need 50 MPs to launch a formal challenge. Will they get that? This is to Corbyn.
I think it's quite possible they'll get that. But even if they do, he doesn't have to stand down, because his mandate is from the party membership, which will continue to back him. So, OK... Or he could say, right, I'm going and I'm going to stand again for the next leadership, and then he gets in again as leader with an even more powerful mandate, although I think support is draining away.
And the Tories?
Tories is very different. It's still mostly the MPs that choose. Here, let's say you had 6 Tory candidates: Johnson, Theresa May, Michael Gove, Andrea Leadsom, Liam Fox, and another. The first round of voting is only by the Tory MPs. The person who gets the least votes, out. Next round, 5 people. Least votes, out. Next round, 4 people. Next round, 3 people, until you are left with the last 2. So if you can knock Boris Johnson out in one of those early rounds, this is what they're going to try and do.
Where his vote goes.
Then he doesn't go through to the last 2. So there's this campaign to unite around Theresa May to stop Boris Johnson, knock him out in the early rounds, so that the last 2, and this is the important bit, the last 2 who are left standing go forward to the Conservative Party members. You see, if it goes as far as that and Johnson's one of the 2, the Conservative Party members will elect Boris Johnson as leader and therefore Prime Minister. If you manage to knock him out, there'll be 2 other candidates that they have to choose from.
And against this backdrop, which is politics, once again, there is serious and important economic news which is happening. For instance, reports that HSBC is set to move staff from London to Paris, and we'll take more on that a little bit later on. All these companies had all these plans because they have to run a business, they have to forward plan in a very big way. They all said it, and people just went, Oh, I don't believe it. They just said, they're stooges. They're acting in their own self-interest. Nonsense. Mark Carney, the IFS, President Obama, the French Foreign Minister, the Finance Minister of Germany, all people said this would happen. It's happening. You reap what you sow. Let's talk to Sandra in Bedford on a tumultuous morning politically for the Labour Party. A very good morning to you, Sandra. You're on LBC.
Morning, Andrew. Can I just say the HSBC in Paris, with their way they strike over there, I doubt it. Sorry, Jeremy Corbyn, I think he should stay as leader, and if I was him, I'd have Frank Field, Kate Hoey and Gisela Stewart up there with me. I really do think it's okay.
What do you think of Diane Abbott as Foreign Secretary, potentially?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. I'd say, that's obviously whoever does that job, but definitely not her. Tim Farron, what a negative man. This is about the people of our country. This isn't about Westminster. We need to, all those young people over in Greece, Italy.
What did he say that offended? What did he say that offended you, Sandra? Tim Farron, leader of the Lib Dems. We had him on earlier.
Well, he wants another referendum or something. His attitude is so negative. They've got all those Lib Dems in the House of Lords. Why is that? How many we got in the House of Commons? He needs to wake up, really. I really do think cross-party at the top, Tories and Labour, get those people who are all pro this country, get them together and then just explain what would have happened to our young people when we would have been saturated, no disrespect for the word, with young people coming from Greece, Italy and Spain.
So it was the fear of immigration which had you vote to leave the European Union?
One of the things, because we can't carry on, we can't have uncontrollable immigration and cope. Where are all these jobs going to come from? And what about the 6 months, with no job within 6 months, then you leave? Who was going to oversee that? Who was going to police it? Was it going to be done by councils that are stretched as it is?
What about the people who are here already from the EU, 50,000 of them who work in the NHS?
Oh, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And the Polish, how hard they work. Honestly, this is so good.
But what about them now?
They'll be fine. They'll be absolutely fine.
And do you think immigration is going to go down?
Well, it has to. It has to.
And who's going to put that in place, Sandra?
Who's going to? I would say we need a cross-party at the top. We need to have Labour and Tory at the top to sort it out. Look at all the laws we've got to sort out. It's got to be done quickly. Merkel and Juncker want us gone. We need to forget the long holiday in the summer. I think we need to, whoever's up the top there needs to have a 2-week holiday somewhere and just get on with this. We need to get out.
Who would you like to see as Prime Minister next?
Boris Johnson.
And who would you like to see as leader of the Labour Party next? Or you think Corbyn should stay, you said?
I think Corbyn should stay.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Well, we'll see whether that happens. There are no plans for Jeremy Corbyn to voluntarily resign his position as leader of the Labour Party, despite what has happened overnight. He has sacked Shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn, B-E-N-N. This is a name that resonates within the Labour Party. And
another name, very briefly,
yep.
Stephen Kinnock. MP, son of Neil, he's just tweeted, I will be supporting the motion of no confidence. So there's two dynasties.
Hardly a surprise if that was going around that he would sign that. He was speaking with us yesterday and was very forthright in his views then. Tim Marshall is with me and we'll be taking a couple of stories from the newspapers, but mostly talking about this, I suspect. OK, time is 9:30. Let's get the news with Glenn Moore. And a very good morning to you. It's only 25 to 10, nearly, here on LBC on a Sunday morning, and so much seems to have happened. It really does. We've had all sorts of people on this morning discussing the latest news from the Labour Party. Now, we should be stressed that Jeremy Corbyn has no intention of going. Labour spokesman earlier on said that he has a mandate to stay, and stay he will, despite sacking his ally, seemingly an ally, Hilary Benn, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, overnight. That was the news we woke up to. Heidi Alexander, Shadow Health, well, she's gone this morning, and a pretty strongly worded letter questioning the leadership of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn in particular, and his qualities, and that letter has gone public. And one senior former Labour MP has said that we can expect one resignation an hour from the shadow cabinet. this morning. So we await the next piece of news. And, of course, that's not confirmed, and that could just be a rumour. There's an awful lot of rumours around at the moment. The question that started this hour is, what problems do you need the Labour Party to solve? And your emails and your tweets are coming in. I'll be taking your phone calls in just a moment. But I think a sense of frustration as well from people. C. Fry has texted in this morning saying, look, I'm angry with all the politicians. They fight like kids over sweets when the country, after the momentous decision, needs them to work together. Forget personal ambition and failure. The future good of our future is at stake. Well, here, in a lot of ways. Tim Farron, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, was on earlier on. They've always believed in Europe, and with only 8 MPs, how big a force are they? But if there is a general election, they will certainly be standing for a second referendum. I hope Tim Farron enjoys his embittered and out-of-touch future in the political wilderness, says John. And Peter Hitchens was with us this morning, calling for a general election, he says, because views of the people not reflected by Parliament. Hashtag keep Corbyn. Perhaps this is the shake-up British politics needed, but what a mess, eh? Says Willow on Twitter. Thank you for all that. Tim Marshall is with me. He's a foreign domestic affairs analyst. He's taken us through how the leadership of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party is decided. Well, what a last 72 hours. I mean, it's very difficult to take all the information in and to filter it all. There have been so many changes. Haven't even mentioned Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland.
Yeah, this is why we hopefully should keep calm and carry on. It has been a bit hysterical, some of the reaction. I mean, people, crying and saying it's the end of the world. The sky is still above us. It hasn't fallen in. It's going to be extraordinarily bumpy. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how many people will not invest in the UK. It really needs several more days at least to see the full result. Will the pound bounce back against the dollar and the euro? It only needs to go up by a few pence, and it's where it was in February.
I believe it's already still above where it was in February.
Right, so...
And the FTSE above 6,000.
Exactly.
But there is the seismic change. It tends to ricochet around, doesn't it?
Yes, I don't underestimate for a moment that this is seismic, and it could go disastrously wrong, but it could also go reasonably well, and we are about to find out. And people really... I tell you what's not been very British, although clearly this is the new Britain. The reactions. I mean, this is the United Kingdom. It's not some tin pot country where people scream and shout at each other over politics. But in fact, we seem to have been screaming and shouting in the last couple of days, and it hasn't been very edifying.
But that was going on before, Tim. The rise in anger.
Yeah. It's part of the whole division. For example, a lot of the Brexiteers do feel they have not been listened to for the past 20 years. And there are many, many unpleasant, bigoted racists amongst the Brexiteers. But there probably are amongst the Remainers as well. And it was so patronising to call Brexiteers Little Englanders, smearing and all with that, when many of them are sort of basically decent, intelligent people who've come to their own conclusions. I had a Labour Party poster put through my door that said, "Don't let Farage speak for you." And I thought, well, don't be so patronising. I'm going to, I'll speak for myself and make my own mind up whichever way I vote. So there's an awful lot of that going on. Sorry, the big picture you wanted.
Well, I was just going to say, just to add to that, though, to be honest, when Bob Geldof is
sticking two fingers up, grow up.
To fishermen. Yeah. Who are looking to protect themselves. Yeah. It's not a good
Well, it's that sort of snobism. You disagree with me, therefore you're an idiot. The guy called Webb, in Michelin Webb, I've never seen it, but it's very big and very popular. After Boris Johnson had his last rallying speech, and he waved and said something Boris-esque, he tweeted to 400,000 people, Boris said X, and the thick people applauded. You really think you're going to persuade people? People have, for too long, have thought that the people in London, the elite in London, including the media, just don't understand us. I'm not surprised by this result. I didn't forecast it. I thought it was just said like everyone else, it's going to be tight. But I'm not surprised it's happened. There was less House of Commons and more Hartlepool would have done well. I am going to wrap this up at some point, I promise. I had a radio debate recently with a very, very nice LSE professor. And she was telling me about the cosmopolitan view and how this is the generation of Europe. The young people, it's the generation of Europe. Our young people all go to Europe. They go to universities over there. They have the Erasmus exchange programme. And I thought, well, my brother's son is in his mid-20s. He's a sheet metal worker in Yorkshire. He doesn't go on the exchange programme of the Erasmus. He doesn't go to, you don't think that is Britain, because it's not. Lastly, sorry, I've got a great deal off my chest. I'd like to thank you for that. How much you charge per hour? There'll be various European countries which will move towards their own referendums. Some people will blame the UK for that. The fact is that already, before this decision, 48% of Italians want out, nearly 50% of French want out, large percentages of the Dutch want out, the Danish may want out, and people are going to start blaming Britain for when they get their chance to have their say. Listen, I voted Remain.
We want to wait when we
renegotiate. Yes, I voted Remain, but I think you've got to respect that there are an awful lot of people who disagree with you.
You've kept John Rentoul waiting.
Sorry, Mr. Rentoul.
He's the chief political commentator for The Independent. A very good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
What an extraordinary set of events this morning in the Labour Party. If we could just narrow it down to that and leave the EU just for a second. I wonder who's next.
Well, indeed. There's rumours that there are going to be further shadow cabinet resignations. Angela Eagle, Lisa Nandy have been mentioned. It does seem strange, though. We've just taken a momentous decision as a nation that's going to completely alter our future, and the Labour Party manages to find itself leading the news bulletins. With its sort of internal wranglings, it is quite extraordinary.
Well, we've taken a bit of criticism this morning on the way we get in touch with people through texts and all the rest of it. We've taken some criticism, but this is the story this hour. I don't know what's happening next hour, but this is the story. We need some leadership, is what people are saying, and I think the general perception in the country is that Jeremy Corbyn is not the man to lead the Labour Party into a general election. It's not the view in the party, but it is the view, John Rentoul, of those who put him in power.
Well, we don't know what the Labour Party membership have made of of Jeremy Corbyn's campaign, during the referendum. But we suspect that they're not quite as enamoured of him as they were. The question is whether there's a candidate who would be better representing the Labour interest. But we just don't know what the Labour interest is at the moment. The Labour Party was all for us remaining. Jeremy Corbyn was extremely reluctant about that. But what is the Labour position now? Does it accept the result of the referendum or not?
God, I can only assume that they did. So what has he actually done wrong? How has it suddenly come to this?
Well, he's being blamed for failing to motivate Labour voters to vote in. Whether he could have made a difference to 1.3 million people, and produced a different result in the referendum, I don't know. But there are certainly a lot of people in the Labour Party who are very unhappy with the fact that Labour voters were not sufficiently enthused to vote to keep us in the European Union.
Indeed, John, going to move on. Thank you ever so much for your time this morning. John Rentoul is with The Independent, chief political commentator. Julie is in Hemel Hempstead. Hi, Julie. Good morning to you. What do you make of all this, then?
Oh, good morning, Andrew.
Morning.
I actually think if they get rid of Jeremy Corbyn, I think they'll have a hard job to ever win another election. I think people are sick to death of people in smart suits. There was all the scandals with the expenses, both sides. And as for, as I say, talking about teaching, he was responsible because the vote went the wrong way for their liking. It was nothing to do with him. People made their mind up on the circumstances they were in. They were worried about more countries coming into the EU, like Albania and so on, and there just wasn't the room. So to think Jeremy Corbyn had any impact at all because he wasn't shouting from the rooftops is completely wrong.
But the fact is, shouldn't he have had more impact with his supporters? And the fact that he didn't, doesn't that tell you what might happen at a general election?
No, it doesn't. I think he didn't have. It was no point in him, as I said, trying to be more positive about things, because people made up their minds not by the papers, not by television programmes. The majority from where they live. They know that housing is terrible. We can't take. And if Albania comes in and other countries, There just isn't the room. It's nothing to do with racism. To be accused of being racist because you're concerned about the number of people. And as we're also worried, housing is the biggest problem, as we're also worried about this 350 million, whether it was or it wasn't, we spend 500 million every week on housing benefit. We have to 9 million people have to have part of their rent paid. So 350 million a week, whether it was or it wasn't, is a small amount compared to the housing benefit bill.
So, Julie, was this... sorry to interrupt. So, Julie, was this a protest vote against the Conservative Party and the way things are? The EU vote, was it just a protest vote? Because this is our future at stake.
No, I think they genuinely, people that voted out were genuinely concerned that we can't take more. If, as I've just repeated, if Albania and other countries, we don't have the rooms for the housing or anything. It was nothing to do with racism. And as it happens, the Tories, I know David Cameron obviously meant well with his policies, but it's been some of the worst policies with the veteran tax. We've got the biggest gap in history between the haves and the have-nots. So I really believe if they want to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn, they better think carefully, because they've got no clue what the hardcore Labour people fed up.
We'll see what happens next, Julie. Appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. It's just gone 9:45, and we'll continue this debate. What do you need to see or hear from the Labour Party? Should Jeremy Corbyn remain? Seems like he's being deserted just at the moment. Heidi Alexander has gone, and he sacked Hilary Benn overnight. That was the news that we woke up to this morning. 0345 60 60 973. Much more to come here on LBC. Here's a look at the travel Sunday morning. 10 minutes till Katie. It is 10 to 10. It's LBC. Andrew Castle with you. We were going to speak to James Ward, who has the task of playing Novak Djokovic on centre court, the defending champion. Wimbledon starting tomorrow. Our apologies, James. We're not going to get to you because we're talking about the Labour Party this morning, and there's been so many changes. Tim Marshall is with me, and honestly, there's been so much going on. I'll get your interpretation in just a moment, Tim, if you don't mind. Going to talk to the political editor of the Financial Times first, George Parker. Good morning to you, George. So first, Hilary Benn and now Heidi Alexander. We expect further resignations from the shadow cabinet. Is that what you hear as well?
Yeah, there's going to be a deluge of resignations from the shadow cabinet. The coup is underway against Jeremy Corbyn. There's a meeting of the Parliamentary Party tomorrow where they're expected to approve the tabling of a motion of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. And then I'd expect on Tuesday there to be a huge swell of Labour MPs registering their discontent with Jeremy Corbyn, accompanied by a mass shadow cabinet walkout. And then they'll invite Jeremy Corbyn to draw his own conclusions, but I suspect the conclusion he draws may not be the one that they want him to.
He's a determined sort, isn't he? I mean, a Labour spokesman's already come out today to say that the mandate is there for him to continue and he won't resign.
Yeah, it's a huge crisis looming for the Labour Party. You've got a situation where the vast majority of MPs at Westminster believe that Jeremy Corbyn is a weak leader who can't possibly take the party to victory at the next election. And they're very worried, of course, that the next election could be sooner than many people think. We'll have a new Prime Minister in office in October. It's quite possible that they could seek a new mandate and have an election as early as this autumn or even next spring. So it means the Labour Party needs to sort itself out very quickly. And on the other hand, you've got this massive Labour supporters, some of whom paid £3 to join the party last year, who think Jeremy Corbyn's doing a great job. He reflects a lot of their views. So you've got this massive disconnect between the party at Westminster, the party in the country, and it's very hard at the moment to see how that's going to resolve itself.
Well, many people on the Leave side feel they've whacked the political class and the business elite and the overpaid and the corporates by voting out of the EU, and they see Jeremy Corbyn as a talisman of the same sort of anger, don't they?
They do. That's true. He reflects a certain viewpoint in the country, but unfortunately, it's not a viewpoint which will take the Labour Party to victory. It's not a majority view in the country. And that is the problem the Labour Party have, because unless they can actually win a majority in the House of Commons, they can't deliver for the people who are angry about, the people you just mentioned, the big banks, the corporates, the elite and all the rest of it. And, it's a painful lesson for the Labour Party that, they win elections when they're led from the centre by people like Tony Blair, who's now, of course, a reviled figure, not just in the Labour Party, but in parts of Britain more generally. They don't win from the left. And that is the problem they've got. And private polling in the Labour Party suggests they've lost 30% of their support since the last election. And don't forget, their last election result was about the worst in the party's history. So they are in a really serious situation.
And the worry looking forward, whichever side of the political divide you're in, is who, if there is a vacuum, fills it. George, thank you so much for your time this morning, political editor of the Financial Times. Tim Marshall is with me. Some very salient points there.
Yeah, no, very, very salient points. And the key word that George used there was vacuum. I mean, there is now... even though Mr Corbyn is still in position, there is a vacuum within the higher echelons of the Labour Party. There's also a vacuum at the higher echelons of the Tory Party. So there's a vacuum at the top of British politics at the very time when we need sage and wise voices and stability. One of the things behind all this is that if you look at the vote breakdown, as well as young people not bothering to vote, which skewed it towards Leave, the Labour heartlands, a lot of them voted to leave. Now, that is where, of course, the Labour MPs are. So they are in complete opposition to their core electorate. And that includes, I was looking at the figures, 38% of Britain's black and other ethnic minorities voted to leave the European Union, which, complicates the argument about racism. And many of them are natural Labour voters. So Labour is just hemorrhaging voters, is flailing around all over the place. There is a way... I think Mr Corbyn will probably just say, I am not resigning, because he does have the mandate from the party constituencies. Constituencies. There is a compromise. Possibly John McDonnell could take over. I'm not sure that would stop the rebellion. But there are other Labour people like Dan Jarvis who might step forward.
Who will put their head above the parapet?
Well,
now?
Jarvis. I think Jarvis might. Yes, I think he's got a good chance, and he's got a lot of popular support, and also he resonates with an awful lot of Labour voters because of his backstory.
Hillary Benn has ruled himself out of being a candidate.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised actually. I don't think that he wants that, but I mean, Andy Burnham has already said he's off to Manchester to try and be mayor. Luciana Berger, it's too early for her. She's off to try and be mayor of Liverpool. For me, Jarvis stands out as the obvious
Angela
alternative.
Regal impresses.
She's been very impressive. Yeah, I mean, look, there's actually going to be a few.
Look at us looking forward.
By the way, can I very briefly say, people are complaining about why you focusing on the Labour Party. Look, this is a national radio station. We are having a big family row. Of course we're going to talk about it.
Leading Britain's conversation. That's what we're doing. We're doing our best anyway. It's Jeremy Corbyn or a Labour government, says Anne Coffey, who is one of the two senior Labour figures to have submitted a no-confidence motion in Jeremy Corbyn just yesterday, saying that he should step down. So hardly surprising that she would say something like that, or to be emboldened to say something like that. Peter is in Orpington in Kent. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Right.
The Labour Party really must come to terms with the fact that they have got it wrong. They are out of touch with their core electorate. A few people, such as Gisela Stewart, have got it right. They back the right side. And I think she should become leader of the Labour Party. She has a German background, and she's worked in Brussels, and she knows just how corrupt Brussels is. And she would make the EU sit up, and especially Germany, because Europe has the same problems as us with especially immigration. Now, on your website, the LBC website, a few months ago, care of Sky News, there was an item called Sweden's Tolerance Tested by Migrant Scourge. It is still on the Sky website, but the video is no longer there. I remember from that video that even Syrian migrants could see the effect that they were having on Sweden. And the political elite just will not accept this, what is happening both in this country and in Europe. We have so much in common, and it takes something cataclysmic like this to make them sit up. Now, I go to the Euronews website, which is in France, and they are definitely pro-EU.
Yep.
And over the last month or two, I've been taking down some headlines. It says, German workers protest over China steel dumping. Migrants, a key factor as far-right makes gains in Austria election. Stop TTIP protests in Europe and beyond against US-EU trade pact. Anger over austerity, third day of rallies in Greece.
Last point, Peter, 10 more seconds if you don't mind.
Sorry?
Last 10 more seconds, please.
OK. What I'm saying is that definitely Gisela Stewart as leader of the Labour Party.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Lynn, last call, just a half a minute if you don't mind.
Right, well, the gentleman previously, I think, spot on with Gisela Stewart. She's a fantastic politician, and, you know, she is the one, somebody we need. All the people that we've known over all these years have let the constituencies down. This is why Wakefield, Yvette Cooper, Mary Kay, Cray, Batley, that was also Brexit, lots of areas apart from Leeds and the posh areas of Yorkshire all voted to leave. So that says something. So, yeah, Gisela Stewart, fantastic. I think I might even vote Labour again. All
right. OK, Lynn, thanks so much. Michael in Ilford said definitely he should go. Ian in Acton, I have sympathy. I think he should stay. Simon in Basingstoke, it's unfair to blame Corbyn. Lisa in Cricklewood, no, he should not. He should stay. My thanks. Thanks so much for coming in.
2 words.
Please.
David Miliband. There's a rumour going around he landed in London this morning.
You're joking.
I'm just having fun, but that is a rumour going around.
And Ed Miliband was on this show just a couple of weeks ago, and he's certainly re-emerged as well. Goodness gracious me. I'm sure Katie Hopkins is going to have one or two things to say on what has been a fairly tumultuous morning here. Keep it here, Tom Swarbrick, at midday as the news develops in the Labour Party and the fallout for Brexit continues. Katie next. Have a great day.